Chapter 23-21. The crowd below the stage was bustling with noise and excitement. Ning Xuema glanced down and saw Yi Tianli standing far away from the crowd. His figure looked a little bleak. She was tempted and wanted to throw the bouquet to him, hoping that his red lawn star would move and find the woman he was destined to. She turned around according to the rules, with her back facing the crowd. She took a deep breath and threw the bouquet high up in the air. With her ability, she could naturally throw the bouquet to whoever she wanted. However, there were too many people below the stage, and there were too many masters. If she threw the bouquet too low, it was possible that someone would use a spell to intercept the bouquet midway. So, she threw it very high. However, it was too high. The bouquet flew directly into the sky and into the clouds. Thousands of pairs of eyes were looking up at the sky. Everyone was ready to catch the bouquet when it fell. Then, the crowd waited for a while, but the bouquet did not fall. Ning Xuema was also somewhat puzzled. She couldn't have thrown it too far and ended up in outer space, right? She didn't seem to have used that much strength. At most, she could only fly up into the clouds and land on Yi Tianli's head. Shen Jiuli's expression changed. He waved his sleeve to the sky, and the floating clouds in the sky disappeared instantly. A person appeared in midair. He was dressed in a loose, light purple robe that concealed his figure. A ghost mask covered his face, and he was holding the bouquet of flowers that everyone had been waiting for. Everyone was angry. They were waiting on the ground obediently. They did not expect that there would be someone in the sky who bought a ticket. Ning Xuema's heart skipped a beat. This was the mysterious person who was elusive. He actually appeared here. The mysterious person looked a little innocent. He looked at the bouquet in his hand and then looked at the two people who had just finished bowing on the stage. After a moment of silence, he said, "I'm just passing by. I have no intention of snatching this bouquet. May I know who you want to throw this bouquet to? I can throw it to you on your behalf." Ning Xuema was speechless. Naturally, she couldn't say that she wanted to throw the flower to Yi Tianli, so she just vaguely replied, "I'm just throwing it for good luck. It belongs to whoever gets it. Since Your Excellency has received it, it proves that this flower is fated with Your Excellency. Now that this flower is Your Excellency's, you can do whatever you want with it." This was originally just a prize, so it didn't matter who it was given to. I don't know how to move the red lawn star, so I'll just throw it to the person who knows how to move the red lawn star. This humble one will toss it again to see who this flower is truly fated with. After the mysterious man finished speaking, he waved his hand, and the bouquet of flowers spun in the air and fell into the crowd. Countless hands in the crowd reached out desperately. But unexpectedly, just as the bouquet was about to fall into the crowd, a sudden gust of wind blew. The gust of wind blew the bouquet in one direction like a whirlwind. Then, with a bang, it hit a person's head. Shen Yima was standing outside the field to watch the show. He was blinded by the gust of wind and was rubbing his eyes. He did not expect that a flower would fall from the sky and hit his head. He hurriedly grabbed it, but when he saw the bouquet in his hand, he was stunned for a moment. Then, he angrily looked at the sky. It was very immoral to throw things from the sky. The mysterious man seemed to have not expected that the flower that he casually threw would hit a little kid. For a moment, he was also stunned. When Shen Yima looked up and stared at him, he was also looking at him. Their eyes met in the air. Chapter 23-22. Shen Yima suddenly felt that he was being penetrated by the mysterious person's gaze. He could even feel that the mysterious person was looking at him with a very complicated gaze. It was so complicated that he could not understand it. However, this could also be his illusion. After all, the mysterious person was wearing a mask. His facial features were all covered, and his eyes were also behind the mask. Shen Yinma could not see his eyes at all. "I am sorry." The mysterious person finally moved his gaze away and said so casually. He turned around and disappeared. He came quickly and left quickly as well. Initially, everyone wanted to congratulate the lucky man who got the flower. However, they could not bring themselves to congratulate him when they saw the adorable face of little Nyenma. The bride's bouquet could only be exchanged twice. If it was exchanged more than twice, it would lose its auspicious effect. Yi Tianli was not a person who cared about trifles. He waved the fan in his hand and congratulated little Nianma. Nianma, congratulations on receiving this flower. Congratulations on your red lawn star. Little Nianma looked at the flower in his hand and then looked at Yi Tianli. He was quite puzzled and asked, "What is a red lawn star? Can it help me improve my kung fu?" Yi Tianli was speechless. Ning Xiuma looked at her son, who was holding the flower. She also felt a deep pain in her stomach. Little Nianma was only 6 months old. How could he already have a red lawn star? It was too early. Shinjuli's gaze also fell on his son. His eyes were slightly deep, as if he was speculating about something. Ning Xiuma seemed to have thought of something. She whispered to Shinjuli, who was next to her, "What is the meaning of this moonflower?" "Reunion." Shinjuli spat out 2 words. Ning Xiuma was relieved. "The meaning of this flower is good. Aren't we reunited as a family?" Shinjuli glanced at the direction where the mysterious person went. There was a flash of deep thought in his eyes, but then he smiled and said softly, "You are right. Our family is reunited." The red cloud-like wedding canopy hung down quietly. The wedding room was decorated beautifully and stylishly. Ning Xiuma curiously looked at everything in the room. This should be Shinjuli's former bedroom, but the original bedroom was gone. This bedroom was obviously newly built. Not only was this palace newly built, but all the buildings in the Fantian Palace were also newly built. Although the style had changed greatly, it was still very ingenious. As Ning Xiuma walked along the way, she only felt that the layout of every place was very much to her liking. "Guru, why did you change all the buildings in Fantian Palace?" Ning Xiuma asked Shinjuli, who had just finished drinking wine with her. The wine was very strong, and her snow-white face was flushed red because of the alcohol. Shinjuli looked at her with deep eyes and raised his arms to hold her in his arms. "The original one is dirty and doesn't meet your aesthetic standards." Ning Xiuma's heart moved. She naturally understood what Shinjuli meant by dirty. Luo Jiuchen had lived here for a period of time. Although there were many places he couldn't enter, he still lived in Fantian Palace and even regarded himself as the owner. With Shinjuli's misophobia, he naturally couldn't tolerate this. He simply destroyed and rebuilt Fantian Palace according to her preferences. With such a husband, what more could a woman ask for? Ning Xiuma couldn't help but raise her head and kiss him on the cheek. "Guru, thank you." Before she could finish her sentence, his lips kissed hers. His voice was hoarse but full of temptation. "I don't accept other forms of thanks. Give me a real one." Chapter 23:23. The ambiguous atmosphere in the room gradually increased. In the deep kiss, the corolla on Ning Xiuma's head was removed by Shinjuli. Her long hair flowed like water and fell on her gradually bare shoulders. In the midst of an intense and deep kiss, he carried her. When Ning Xiuma regained her senses, she had already landed on the big, warm, and soft bed. The wedding dress that was so difficult to take off unexpectedly left her body and flew out of the bed curtain in an instant, leaving only a thin set of underwear on her body. Her heart was beating like thunder. Although Ning Xiuma had been entangled with him for 3 lifetimes and had rolled in the bed a few times, as Ning Xiuma, the chances of rolling in the bed with the great god in this lifetime were pitifully few. Other than that time when they used force, the two of them had never been officially intimate. The few times that Ning Xiuma had left a deep impression on her were after she transmigrated and the great god from 50,000 years ago. Those few times were like a dream to her. Only this moment was the most real. Although his kiss was restrained, it was like a violent storm that wanted to completely engulf her. It made it hard for her to breathe. After being tossed around for 3 lives, his skill in this aspect was extremely high. Very quickly, Ning Xiuma was completely defeated by his teasing. The blood in her body boiled, and her originally snow-white skin turned a light pink. Her cheeks were flushed red, and her eyes seemed to be watery. Finally, the last piece of cloth was removed from her body. Her black hair was spread out below her, and her sparkling and translucent jade-like body was pressed against the fiery red bedding. White on white, red on red, contrasting with a kind of soul-stirring beauty. Shinjili took a deep breath. His eyes were as deep as the unfathomable sea. There were waves surging in his eyes, wanting to completely sweep her away. The blood in his body was surging. His blood was like boiling lava that was screaming to erupt. In an instant, it ignited each other's passion. Shuima, his voice was low and hoarse like the waves rolling in from afar. He lifted one of her legs. "Call me husband." Ning Shuima looked at him with her watery eyes. She naturally knew what was waiting for her. Even she herself was looking forward to this moment. After reuniting with him for such a long time, she was also eager to feel each other's true feelings. But she seemed to be a virgin again, seeing that he was about to bring the storm over. She couldn't help but push his chest with her hand and said in a trembling voice, "You have to be gentler." Shun Julie hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, Shuima, I will give you a wedding night that you will never forget." It was a stormy night. Ning Shuima felt that this was indeed an unforgettable wedding night. But the most unforgettable thing was not how many times they went to the mountains together, but the shock of the next morning. Initially, Shun Julie had been tormenting her until dawn. Before she could fall asleep, she was awakened by the sound of the door being slammed open. Before she could react, the door was slammed open by someone. A small figure rushed in directly. Fortunately, Shun Julie reacted quickly. He wrapped Ning Shuima in his arms tightly with a quilt and put a set of clothes on his body automatically. "Mother, Lord Father." The little one rushed towards the bed curtains. Shun Julie waved his sleeve, and the little one stopped moving. "Father." The little one's face was red, and his eyes were full of confusion. "Get out." Shun Julie spat out 2 words. With another wave of his sleeve, little Nianma was directly teleported out of the bedroom. Chapter 23-24. Shun Julie turned around and patted the blanket that was wrapped around Ning Shuima. "Don't be afraid. Wait for me here. I want to see what is wrong with this boy." He turned around and walked out of the room. Ning Shuima's face was burning under the blanket. Her son had almost seen her parents' private moment. It was strange. The boy usually woke up late. Why did he wake up so early today? She even had tears in her eyes, as if she had been frightened by something. She wanted to put on her clothes and go out to sea, but her body was so sore that she did not even want to move her fingers. He struggled in his blanket for a while, but he didn't manage to get up. He simply lay back down and listened to the movements outside. After a while, she could not help but laugh. It turned out that little Nianma had a nightmare. He actually dreamed that the mysterious man with the ghost face was looking at him from outside his bed. The deep gaze made his hair stand on end. He opened his eyes and found that he was still in his own Qingxiao palace. He was the only one in the palace. He remembered the gaze of the mysterious man in the dream and felt a chill in his heart. He could no longer stay calm and ran to his parents' room to seek protection. Shun Julie listened to him quietly. He directly took the little boy out and said calmly, "It is just a nightmare. Is it worth making a fuss? If you are a man, you should stay calm." Little Nianma was a little embarrassed by his father's scolding, but he was not convinced. "I'm a boy now, not a man. A man should be trained from a young age." Shinjili took him back. "Well, I'll be a good man in the future. Father, I'm still sleepy." Little Nianma's voice was still full of sleepiness. "Go back to your Qingxiao palace if you are sleepy. But I am scared. I always feel that there is a pair of eyes staring at me." Little Nianma was still afraid. "It is just a psychological effect. Let's go. I will send you back." "No, father. Can you let Nianma sleep with both of you? Nianma does not take up much space. A small bed is enough." Little Nianma still wanted to fight for his rights. "No, you've grown up and can no longer sleep with your parents." Shun Julie sternly refused. "But mother has promised me yesterday." Little Nianma was not convinced. "I have the final say in this matter." Shun Julie only replied with a few words before he took the boy out. The conversation between the father and son gradually faded away. Ning Shuima couldn't help but rub her forehead. She didn't expect to get married so soon, so she casually agreed to her son's request. Speaking of which, why did his son have nightmares? The Phanteon Palace was always shrouded in a divine aura, and there were also 8 divine beasts guarding it. No evil beings could enter, so it shouldn't be the work of any evil beings. Could it be that he was startled by the bouquet of flowers that the mysterious man threw on his head yesterday? It should be. While she was lost in thought, a gentle breeze blew through the hall. Shun Julie had returned and appeared directly in the inner hall. He lifted the bed curtain and got on the bed. He directly hugged Ning Shuima in his arms. "Why don't you sleep more?" Ning Shuima shook her head. "I can't sleep." She was still worried about the mysterious man. "Great master, have you checked the Nyima Palace? Is there anything wrong?" Shun Julie shook his head slightly. "There is nothing wrong. There is only Nyinma's aura in the palace." Ning Shuima breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the little guy really had an unintentional dream. However, when she thought of the bouquet of flowers, she still felt a little uneasy. The bouquet of flowers that the mysterious man threw just happened to hit her son's head. Could it mean that her son and the mysterious man were fated? Chapter 23-25. Don't. Although she had read a few novels and did not look down on the protagonists, she still did not want her son to have any relationship with a man. Who is the mysterious man with the ghost face? Ning Shuima was still very curious. She did not have all the memories of Shuima in her previous life, so she did not know much about the people in this continent. She only occasionally heard about this mysterious man from General Manager Himu. No one really knew the background of this mysterious man. They only knew that he was very powerful and was very mysterious. He was also very low-key and never fought for power. He was really a mysterious man. Because this man did not care about fame and fortune, no one really investigated him. Even General Manager Himu, who was always very well informed, did not find out anything about him. Originally, Ning Shuima did not care about this mysterious man. However, this mysterious man had passed by her twice and scared little Nyinma once. This time, she could not ignore it even if she wanted to. Shinjili pondered for a moment and did not care. Don't care who he is. As long as he is harmless to us, it is fine. Ning Shuima was once bitten, twice shy. It is hard to say that he is not malicious to us. I always feel that he is not as simple as he seems. Little Nyinma's nightmare is also a little strange. Shun Julie kissed her lips. Don't worry, I know what to do. Her lips were like the most delicate petals. Shun Julie only wanted to kiss her gently, but he did not expect that he could not let go after the touch. Early in the morning was the time when men were most easily excited. At this moment, he was holding the person he had been thinking about day and night. Even Shun Julie was a little bit unable to control himself. Of course, he did not want to control himself. After a deep kiss, both of them were panting. Ning Shuima's beautiful face was bright red. Her eyes were watery, as if there was a pool of autumn water in them. His eyes were also full of water, like the turbulent sea. Shuima, since you're not sleepy yet, let's do something more meaningful. Shinjili propped himself up and looked down at her. His eyes were filled with surging waves. Ning Shuima wanted to protest, but he sealed her lips with a kiss. The bed curtains were pulled down again, covering the entire room. If Ning Shuima was asked to describe the days after their marriage, she could only describe them with 8 words: sweet, and her waist hurt a little. It wasn't easy for the two of them to be together. Naturally, they were together day and night and couldn't bear to be apart for even a moment. As for little Nyinma, who was finally reunited with his family, he was a little miserable. His father probably wanted to make up for the fatherly love that he had missed out on for the past 6 months. His schedule was packed to the brim with training, martial arts, and studying. Aside from sleeping at night, there was no time for him to rest. Little Nyinma was about to cry because of his fatherly love. Moreover, when he slept at night, he could no longer get into his mother's arms because there was a new wizardry barrier in his father's bedroom. He could no longer break indirectly. Not only could the wizardry barrier prevent him from entering, but it could also block his voice. One night, he was so angry that he simply scratched the door for the whole night. However, there was no movement inside at all. He felt wronged and angry at the same time. He felt that his parents did not love him anymore and allowed him to cry outside. He simply fell asleep outside the door. He wanted to see if his mother would feel sorry for him when she saw him sleeping outside the door the next day. Then, if his mother felt sorry for him, he could openly sleep with his mother at night. His little abacus was crackling and rattling, but... Chapter 23:26. His little abacus crackled loudly, but when he woke up, he found that he was not sleeping outside his parents' bedroom, but on a big rock. The breeze was rather chilly. He sneezed and looked around. Then he realized that there were a lot of rocks around him. All kinds of big stones were arranged high and low under the moonlight. They looked like giants looking down at him. Where was this? He did not remember that there was such a stone slope in the Fantion Palace. Little Nyinma jumped up. He was short, and the stones were too tall. They blocked his view. He looked at the tallest stone not far away and decided to jump on it to have a better look. With his qigong, it was easy for him to jump on a big stone. However, he did not expect that he would hit a wizardry barrier when he jumped less than 10 feet high. He was bounced back and fell on his butt. Nyinma was speechless. He seemed to have suddenly understood something. He clenched his little fists tightly. This must be his father's masterpiece. His father must have heard him scratching the door and crying. He must have thought that he was too noisy. In order to punish him, he locked him in the array. Fortunately, he had seen this array before. In order to train him, his father had taught him how to break the array. He also locked him in several arrays to train him. This array was one of them. Although this array was complicated, since he had broken it once, he could naturally break it a second time. Little Nyinma clenched his fists. However, after he broke out of the array this time, he must complain to his mother during lunch. With this thought in mind, little Nyinma began to break the array. He was a genius with memory. He would not forget any array that he had broken. He would not make any mistakes. He could break out of this array in less than 2 hours. He looked up at the moon above his head and calculated the time. He estimated that when he broke out of the array, the sky would be slightly brighter. Perhaps he could still make it in time to greet his mother. 2 hours later, Nyinma squatted under a stone. He looked around in disbelief. There seemed to be more stones around, and there was even fog in the array. Nyinma had practiced kung fu to this level. In fact, she could already abstain from eating, but she liked the feeling of eating together with her family. Therefore, she had to eat a meal every day for the past few days. What's more, those dishes were all prepared by Julie. Every dish was delicious, and she wanted to have a second bite after the first. The Almighty's delicious food was a temptation that she couldn't resist. In the past few days, Nyinma, who was exhausted by his homework, would always come to her and have a meal with her. He would always talk about things that interested him. However, this time, the dishes were served neatly, and the aroma of the food lingered in the air, but little Nyinma was still nowhere to be seen. Nyinma was puzzled. She asked the Almighty who was sitting beside her, "Where is Nyinma? Why don't I see him today?" Julie peeled a prawn for her and put it on her plate. Calmly, he said, "Nyinma is practicing the art of breaking the array. He has forgotten to eat and sleep. I don't think he will come for dinner today." Nyinma was pleased. Her son was actually so hardworking. She was also a secret agent. She knew that strict requirements were the only way to train a real talent. Of course, she would not object to her son being so hardworking. She nodded and did not ask anymore. However, she still cared about her son. She saved a good fruit for her son. She was going to wait for her son to come out of the array. Chapter 23:27. In fact, 3 days had passed. Nyinma had left 3 peaches of immortality for her son, but her son was still nowhere to be seen. She was a little worried, so she asked Julie. Julie was drinking tea. He poured her a cup of tea and then turned the teacup for her to speculate. This time, in order to train his observation and distinguishing ability, I deliberately changed the array that he had been through. Perhaps he did not notice the subtle difference between the 2 arrays and went to the fork. Nyinma was speechless. She drank the tea and asked him curiously, "What do you mean by subtle difference? What is the difference?" Shun Julie thought for a moment and said, "For example, there is a small crack in the hexagonal stone where the eye of the array was, and there is a 2-inch tall grass at the original life gate." Ning Xuema was speechless. She knew about Shun Julie's array. When she was Shun Julie's disciple, he had locked her in there. There were piles of irregular stones, hexagonal stones, octagonal stones, oval stones, and pentagonal stones. All of them were natural stones. The wrinkles on the stones were finer than chrysanthemum petals. It was comparable to the wrinkles on an 80-year-old woman's face. If there was a small crack on the stones, no one would notice it. As for the grass, it was everywhere. If there were hundreds of grass at the life gate, and there was one more, even she would not notice it, let alone Shun Yinma. Poor son. If he relied on his old experience to break through the array, he would be dragged into the ditch. No wonder he could not get out after so long. Yinma was still so young. Was it really good to let him break through such a complicated array? Did the master really want to train his son's ability to break through the array? Or did he think that the boy was a third wheel and sent him away? Is there any food in the array? Ning Xuema was a little worried when she thought of her son who had not eaten for 3 days. Don't worry. In the array, he will be fine even if he does not eat for half a month. Moreover, he has practiced the Anidia technique. It will not be a problem for him to last for a month. Shin Yinma had spent 3 days and 3 nights in this godforsaken stone array. He did not have the fragrant food that his father cooked. There was no mother's warm embrace and caress. He was the only one who stayed in the stone formation, guarding a pile of broken stones and studying them. When he was tired, he would fall asleep on the big stone and continue studying when he woke up. In the past few days, he had cried and rolled on the ground. Since there was no one around, he did not have to worry about his image as the Son of God. But no matter how much he cried or threw a tantrum, it was to no avail. Instead, there were more and more stones around him, and the fog was getting thicker and thicker. He finally understood that the ruse of self-injury was useless against his father. If he wanted to get out, he could only rely on himself. He didn't know why, but he always felt that someone was watching him, but he couldn't find that person even after using his telekinesis for a long time. He rolled his eyes and instantly understood. It must be his father watching him from outside the array. He couldn't give up like this. He had to get out. He couldn't let his father look down on him. Therefore, he wiped his tears, patted his little robe, and stood up. He continued to stare bitterly at the pile of broken stones, trying to figure out how to break the formation. In fact, Shin Yinma thought too much. His father could not wait to stick to his mother every day. So how could he have the time to visit him? Someone else was looking at him. On the big stone, outside the stone formation, stood a man in black. His face was covered by a pitch-black ghost mask. Chapter 23-28. He was wearing a black mask with a grimace on it. His pure black robe was embroidered with dark patterns with golden threads, which made him look luxurious and domineering. There was a strange jade pendant hanging on his waist, which shone with unpredictable light under the sunlight. At this moment, he stood still on the big rock and looked at the giant stone array not far away. He also looked at the little kid who was running around in the array. The jade pendant on his waist flashed. The man in black looked at the jade pendant with a complicated expression. Poof! The wizardry barrier was broken, and a little kid with a face like a little cat came out. He stood like a little teapot with his hands on his waist and laughed loudly. Ha ha! I'm out. The kid was Shin Yinma. It took him 3 days to finally get out of the stone array. How could he not be happy? Shin Yinma was laughing without caring about his image. Suddenly, he felt someone quietly looking at him. He was shocked and immediately looked over. A pitch-black, ghostly face, a pitch-black outer robe, and that eternally complicated gaze. It was the person who hit his head with a flower. It was the person who stood in front of his bed and scared him in the middle of the night. It was the person who gave him nightmares for several days. Run. When Shun Yinma saw the person, this was the only thought in his mind. He was so scared that he took a step back. However, he stepped on a small stone and slipped, falling back into the array. The man in black was speechless. Yima was speechless, looking at the familiar crumpled stones around him and looking at the gradually gathering thick fog. Yima wanted to cry, but had no tears. He swore that he would never forgive that person. The moon was shining brightly. Yima broke out of the array again. This time, he was not so arrogant. He carefully poked his little head out of the wizardry barrier and looked around. After making sure that the man in black was not around, he was relieved and jumped out boldly. After jumping out, he seemed to be a little worried. He used his telekinesis to check the surroundings again to make sure that there was no aura of the man in black. He then sighed with relief and made a peace sign with his hand. He ran back to the Fanteon Palace with a smile. Above the clouds, the black-clothed man stood with his hands behind his back. He looked down at the cautious figure below and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he flew up to the clouds in time. Otherwise, he would have scared the little kid back to the array. He lowered his head and looked at the shining jade pendant on his waist. The jade pendant was actually engraved with 8 mythological beasts: the azure dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, the black tortoise. The 8 mythological beasts were all facing the center. In the center, there was a sparkling and translucent ball. It was that ball that had been flashing recently. It was not until little Nianmao was far away that the jade returned to its normal color. He simply sat down on the big rock. His hand, which had been hidden in his sleeve, finally stretched out. He took the jade pendant from his waist and held it between his 2 fingers. His fingers looked as if they were carved from jade. The shape of his hand was extremely beautiful, making people want to touch it. That jade was sparkling and translucent, and that hand was white and translucent. Under the contrast of the two, it seemed as if they were both transparent. He looked at the jade for a moment and suddenly sighed softly. He raised his hand as if he was going to rub his eyebrows, but the moment he touched the mask, he stopped. Was it him? Let's observe for a while longer. Little Nianmao was smart enough to realize that as long as he did not stick to his mother at night, his father would be very nice to him. The homework that he assigned during the day was also not too much. Chapter 23-29. Little Nianmao was smart enough to realize that as long as he did not stick to his mother at night, his father would be very kind to him. The homework assigned to him during the day was not too much, and he even had time to swim in the lake for half a day. Even his father's gaze towards him was filled with love and affection. Once he threw a tantrum, he would definitely sleep with his mother, and his father would be unhappy. Of course, his father had always been a man of few words. Even if he was unhappy, he would not show it. He just looked at him with a smile that was not a smile for a long time, and then quietly increased the intensity of the training. If the original amount of practice was the wool of a sheep, then the increased amount of practice was the hair of a fat cow. It was a few times. Little Nianmao could not finish it, so he was thrown into a certain array as a punishment. It was only natural that he would be thrown into a certain array to revise. Little Nianmao had experienced it twice and summed it up. Once, he was so angry that he ran to his mother to complain. He said that his father was using his position to avenge a private grudge by depriving him of the opportunity to enjoy his mother's love. He even shook his mother's sleeve and said that his mother had promised him that she would sleep with him, so she couldn't go back on her words. What his father was doing now was framing his mother. Little Nianmao had read a lot of books, so he could talk a lot. Ning Xuemao felt that her son was right. Since she had promised her child, she could not go back on her words. Therefore, that night, she deliberately brought Nianmao to Shun Juli's study to tell him about her son's thoughts. Then, she discussed with Shun Juli that she would sleep with her son every other day. Her son was still so young, so he could not be deprived of maternal love. When the child was 1 year old, she would let her son sleep alone. Little Nianmao thought that his mother's suggestion was a good one and also a very normal one. The children in the Celestial Kingdom would only be separated from their mothers after they were 1 year old. Some spoiled children would be separated even later and even slept together until they were 2 years old. At that time, Shun Juli was helping Ning Xuemao to review the documents in Mo Palace in the study room. When he heard what Ning Xuemao said, he smiled and looked at Shun Nianmao. Shun Nianmao felt a chill down his spine as if he was being stared at by a lion. It turned out that Shen Yinma's intuition was very accurate. He only slept comfortably with his mother for one night, but the next day, the difficulty of his homework suddenly doubled. Not only that, but his father had also developed a new array formation. Using the excuse of letting him test the array formation, he directly threw him into the array formation and couldn't come out for a few days and nights. Breaking formations was the best way to improve one's abilities. Not only did he have to identify the path of the array, but he also had to fight with the monsters that appeared out of nowhere. The level of the monsters would also increase along with Little Nianma's power. Little Nianma's kung fu would improve significantly after he broke the array. Although his mother loved him, she did not spoil him. Perhaps it was because both of them had suffered too much during those days, so his mother also wanted to train him to be a talent. Therefore, she turned a blind eye to the training that his father gave him, as long as he did not lose his life and did not really hurt him. In this way, although Little Nianma fought for the benefit of letting his mother sleep with him every other day, the opportunity to really enjoy this benefit was very rare. It could be said that it was only once in a while. Little Nianma sat on a big branch of a big tree and looked up at the moon in the sky. He always felt a little uncomfortable. Chapter 23:30. This time, the array formation was an endless tropical rainforest. The rainforest was full of swamps, and there was no place to stand. There were all kinds of monsters in the rainforest, including crocodiles, poisonous snakes, and lizards. There was also a big poisonous mosquito that gave Little Nianma a headache. It kept buzzing in his ears, and if he was not careful, it would bite him and leave a few red marks on his tender skin. The weather in the rainforest was very strange. One moment, the sun was hot on his head, and the next moment, it was cloudy with heavy rain. This time, the array formation that his father set for him was particularly bad. He could not use any spells in it, and could only rely on his physical strength. Whether it was killing monsters or walking, he had to rely on his real kung fu. Once they had gotten used to using spells, they would no longer pay attention to their physical training. Little Nianma was a genius in spells, but he was lazy when it came to physical training. After being thrown into the array, Little Nianma suffered a lot. He was often chased by all kinds of monsters. If he did not pay attention, he would be drenched by the rain. The air in the rainforest was humid. After being wet, without the support of spells, it was difficult for his clothes to dry. Just like now, he was riding on a branch and relying on the wind blowing through the forest to dry his clothes. A breeze blew past, causing him to sneeze. He hugged his arms and felt that the wind was a little gloomy. He looked down again and tapped his temples with his small hand. He had already been trapped in this lousy array for 7 days. However, he still had no clue. When could he get out? Rumble! His stomach was growling again. In this crazy forest, not only could he not use any spells, but even the fasting spell did not work here. He was easily hungry, and he did not have any dry food with him. If he wanted to fill his stomach, he could only rely on himself to hunt. The animals in the forest were more agile than monkeys. It was not easy to hunt, and it took him a long time to hunt one. A pair of small green eyes flashed under the tree. Little Nianma rushed down like a little wolf. A moment later, he caught a small wild boar that was also hungry. Although it was called a small wild boar, it was not small. It was about 50 kilograms. Little Nianma swung his sword and killed the little boar. Wild boar meat wasn't tasty, but the baby boar tasted better. The meat from this wild boar was enough for him to eat for 2 days. His technique was very fast. A moment later, he cut off the good meat from the wild boar and threw the skeleton on the spot to attract other carnivores. He brought the meat to another place. This was the standard way to survive in the wild. There were many carnivores in the forest, including leopards, tigers, wolves, and other large animals. If he didn't dispose of the food he hunted quickly, the smell of blood would attract other carnivores and snatch the fruits of his labor. Therefore, Little Nianma finally learned his lesson after a few failures. As long as he could hunt for food, he would run away after slicing the meat and find a safe place to roast it. Not only was hunting difficult, but the most difficult thing was making a fire. The wood here was so damp that water could drip out, and he didn't have any spells to use, so he could only use the most stupid method to make a fire. Little Nianma was hitting the 2 stones with all his might. He used the sparks to ignite the half-dry firewood that he had spent a lot of effort to dry with his internal power. The process was very difficult. Little Nianma was busy for a long time, but he still could not ignite the fire. Instead, he was so hungry that his legs were weak and his vision was blacked out. No wonder his mother said that survival in the wild was a test of one's ability. It was true. If only the fire could be preserved, I will help you ignite the fire, and you can share half of your meat with me. How about that? Suddenly, a voice came from above Little Nianma. Chapter 23:31. Little Nianma raised his head. When he saw who it was, he was so shocked that his fingers trembled. The small flame that he had tried so hard to ignite was extinguished by the man's stone. The man was dressed in black, almost the same color as the night sky. Only the mask on his face was red. It was still the same ghost mask, but this time, the ghost face looked particularly gloomy. It was the mysterious ghost face man. Although he often changed his appearance, Little Nianma could still recognize him at a glance. Who was this man? Why did he always appear in his territory? Who are you? Why do you keep following me? Shin Nianma took a step back and looked at the man with vigilance. These days, he often felt that someone was watching him in the dark. Now, it seemed that it was not an illusion. The man folded his arms and only said 2 words, "I'm just passing by." Passing by? Who was he kidding? He came to the Fantion Palace and was just passing by? Strange. How did this man enter the Fantion Palace? The prohibition of the Fantion Palace had been activated. Without the guidance of the family of 3, outsiders could not enter at all. How did this ghost-faced man come in? Could it be that his parents invited him to pass by? Since it was not invited, there was only one possibility. This man sneaked into the Fantion Palace. In this world, there was only one person who could sneak into the Fantion Palace, and that was Luo Jiuchen. Was this man Luo Jiuchen? Did he not die and came to the Fantion Palace to seek revenge? At this moment, many speculations flashed through Little Nianma's mind. The man did not seem to notice Little Nianma's increasing vigilance. He took out a piece of wood that looked like a big mushroom and waved it in front of Little Nianma. This is the firewood. It is good at preserving the fire. If you have it, you don't have to break stones to start a fire. While he was talking, the man blew at the wood, and a flame came out of the wood. This was really a good thing. Little Nianma thought about it and decided to make an exchange with the mysterious man. A moment later, a fire was finally built. Little Nianma gave half of the wild boar meat to the man and let him roast it himself. The man did not seem to have any intention to cook the meat. Instead, he kept the meat and sat on a branch nearby to watch Little Nianma roast the meat. Little Nianma had just finished grilling a skewer. He brought it to his nose and smelled it. His culinary skills were good, and the barbecued meat was fragrant. He breathed a sigh of relief and closed his eyes. When he was about to take a bite to soothe his empty stomach, he did not expect to bite on a branch. The dry and hard branch almost pricked his little mouth. He opened his eyes, and then he realized that all the flesh on his branch had disappeared. Only an empty branch was left in his hand. Little Nianma remained silent. He immediately looked at the mysterious man, only to find him sitting sideways on a tree branch, his black robe hanging down like tassels. The skewers of meat that he had roasted flew diagonally above the mysterious man as if they had grown legs. Piece by piece, they fell towards the mysterious man's mouth. The mask on the mysterious man's face had been taken off, but it still covered his face so that Little Nianma could not see his face. All he could see was the meat that he had grilled disappearing. Little Nianma was furious and rushed to the mysterious man. "Give me back my meat." He had already given half of it to the mysterious man, but he still wanted to snatch it from him. The mysterious man did not move, but his body moved like a stream of water and moved to another branch. Little Nianma missed. Chapter 23:32. You didn't keep your promise. Little Nianma glared at the mysterious man and wanted to kick him away. I only promised to give you the fire seed in exchange for half of your meat. I didn't say that I can't take the meat away from you. The man answered casually, You can take it back if you want. Take it back. Nonsense. That skewer of meat had already entered his stomach, so he couldn't kick it out again, right? Little Nianma looked at the man angrily for a long time. Then his stomach growled again. You can still roast it again, the man kindly suggested. You can't take it anymore, Little Nianma warned. The man seemed to smile and looked at Little Nianma with a sharp gaze. You can think of a way to prevent me from taking your meat. Little Nianma was speechless. The man's kung fu was not ordinary. It could be described as unfathomable. Little Nianma's kung fu could not be compared to his. He could probably kill him with just a little finger. In this array, Little Nianma could not even find a helper. It seemed that there was no other way to deal with such a strong man except to surrender. Little Nianma's face turned pale and red. Finally, he gave in. How about this? I will roast 2 portions each time. One for you, and the other for me. How about that? If you don't agree, then I will not roast it. Neither of us can eat it. The man seemed to be moved. He nodded slightly and finally agreed. Therefore, Little Nianma began to roast the meat again. He roasted 2 skewers in one go. After roasting, he gave one to the mysterious man. The man looked at the skewer in his hand and said, I want yours. Little Nianma was too lazy to argue with him and gave his skewer to him. Just like that, Little Nianma roasted the meat 4 or 5 times in a row. Each time, he let the mysterious man choose whatever he wanted. The man did not hesitate and chose the biggest one each time. Little Nianma was finally full, but there was not much left of the wild boar meat in his body after that. After he was full, he patted his little robe and stood up. The man sat on the tree and looked at him. I have eaten so much of your meat. Logically speaking, I can help you a little. What do you need me to help you with? Little Nianma glanced at him and shook his head. No need. That person was a little surprised and continued to tempt him. I might be able to help you find the array, to break the array. Little Nianma shook his head again. No, let's go our separate ways. He even waved his hand at that person to say goodbye. Then he turned around and strode away. A moment later, his small figure had already disappeared into the dense forest. That person sat there and looked at the place where his figure disappeared. He muttered to himself for a moment. Then his figure rose, as if he was about to leap onto the treetops. However, he suddenly staggered and almost fell down from the tree branch. He placed his hand on his stomach, where he suddenly felt a burning pain. He was poisoned. He was poisoned. He slowly sat down with disbelief in his eyes. Needless to say, this poison was placed by the little fellow. The question was, when had he drugged him? It was obvious that he had chosen the roasted meat on the spot every time. Could it be that the little fellow had drugged every skewer of meat? Did he just take the antidote in advance? He briefly sensed his body and his fingers tightened. The poison in his body was very strong. It was a strange poison that he had never seen before. In just a moment, he could already feel that the toxicity of the poison had begun to rush crazily in his blood. If he did not find a way to cure it, he was afraid that his vitality would be damaged. If only it wasn't Luo Jiuqin's resurrection. Little Nianma began to look for a way out again. He had been trapped here for 7 days, and he had almost figured out the layout of the rainforest. As long as he continued to calculate, he should be able to find a way out. He sat in a clearing and wrote and drew pictures with a twig. Suddenly, he seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head and looked around, but he didn't find anything. Frowning, he faintly felt that there was a pair of eyes watching him from the dark. Could it be that the mysterious man had returned? Little Nianma stood up and was about to search the place. Suddenly, he heard a gust of wind beside him. He subconsciously moved forward and dodged to the side to avoid the sudden attack from behind. Only then did he turn around to take a look and abruptly took a step back. Not far from him, a huge black python appeared. Chapter 23:34. Divine Master, is Nianma okay in the array? Ning Xiuma looked up at the array that Shun Julie had set up and was worried. Shun Julie had been holding her waist. He looked up at the array and shook his head slightly. He is fine, but he has been trapped in there for 7 days. I am worried that he will be hungry. There is enough food in there. He will not be hungry as long as he is careful. Shinjili did not care. Although there were many beasts in the array, they could not really hurt people. Once little Nianma's life was threatened, the beasts would automatically disappear. Therefore, little Nianma should be safe in there. That was the only way to train his self-protection ability. Shinjili hugged her and walked away. Didn't you want to go out with me? Let's go. Ning Xiuma was still worried. Are we going to leave the child alone here? He will cry if he can't find us. Shinjili squinted his eyes and looked at the array again. He then shook his head. Don't worry. He'll have to stay in there for 3 or 4 days. We will be back in 3 or 4 days. But, Xiuma, a loving mother will spoil her son. Shinjili smiled and rubbed her hair. Don't worry. He will be fine. Ning Xiuma thought about it and felt that she was worrying too much. The Fanteon Palace was now their territory. Even a fly could not enter without their permission. Even if little Nianma was trapped in the array, he would be fine. She sighed. After all, he is still young. Shinjili did not think much of it. Young? He is now 10 months old. When I was his age, I could already take charge and be famous in the 6 realms. That was true. The Divine Master seemed to have become the master of heaven and earth when he was 1 year old. Ning Xiuma suddenly had a thought. When little Nianma was 3 months old, he looked like a 3 or 4-year-old baby. Now that he was 10 months old, he still looked like a 3 or 4-year-old baby. It seemed that he did not grow at all. He wouldn't grow abnormally slowly like her when she was young, right? However, when she was 10 months old, she looked like a 7 or 8-year-old child. Was little Nianma's growth slower than hers? Ning Xiuma voiced her concerns. Shinjili's eyes flashed slightly, and he touched her head. Don't worry. When he should grow up, he will naturally grow up. Ning Xiuma, what did he mean by it was time to grow up? Perhaps her Nianma was like an ordinary child who grew up according to the rules of a normal person. After all, she was still an ordinary human when she was pregnant with Nianma. It did not seem right. Little Nianma could run and jump as soon as he was born, just like Neza. However, it hasn't been growing for some reason recently. Forget it. As long as the child could grow up normally, it would be fine. She did not have to ask for too much. Besides, although Nianma's height was like that of a 3 or 4-year-old, his intelligence was far beyond his peers. He had even cultivated to such a high level of kung fu. Thinking of this, she put the question aside and let Shun Julie walk with her. When she was about to leave, she looked back at the array that was suspended in mid-air. Suddenly, she seemed to have thought of something and pulled Shun Julie's sleeve. Divine Master, I always feel that there are outsiders in our Fanteon Palace. Do you have the same feeling? Shun Julie glanced at the array, and his eyes were faintly complicated. Those who can come in are not outsiders. Ning Xiuma looked up at him. Chapter 23:35. Shun Julie looked at her big clear eyes and could not help but kiss her forehead. He slowly changed the topic. Xiuma, I remember you said that you wanted to go to the Monster Kingdom. Ning Xiuma finally remembered the important matter. She hugged Shun Julie's arm. You are right. Let's go to the Monster Kingdom now. Aren't you afraid that you will leave your son alone at home? Shun Julie was very satisfied with her action. He took the opportunity to hug her waist again. Aren't there 8 mythological beasts guarding here? Even if little Nianma comes out, he will not be too lonely. Well, let's go. Without any explanation, she pulled Shun Julie and flew straight away. Shun Julie chuckled in his heart. Even without the 8 mythological beasts, his son would not be lonely. The wheel of fate that belonged to little Nianma had begun to turn. It all depended on when the kid would awaken. The sky in the Monster Kingdom was always covered with dark clouds. From time to time, it would rain heavily. When Ning Xiuma and Shun Julie arrived, there was not a single raindrop in the sky. However, after a few miles, the rain poured like a torrential downpour. Since both of them had practiced kung fu to such a level, They were naturally not afraid of heavy rain. Ning Shuema floated on the ground. The curtain of rain split behind her, and not a single drop fell on her body. She could not help but turn in a circle. Her red dress spread out in the wind like a flaming red butterfly. An umbrella appeared on top of her head. Shinjuli hugged her slender waist. You don't have to use spells. Sometimes it is not bad to taste the normal rain in the world. To her, his embrace was always the warmest. Ning Shuema comfortably snuggled into his embrace. You're right. The two of them snuggled up against each other, sharing the same umbrella as they walked forward. The raindrops fell all around. Only under the umbrella was the peace and warmth. Ning Shuema snuggled in his arms and felt that he was quietly taking care of her. The umbrella in his hand was slightly tilted to her so that she would not be touched by the rain. The warmth came unexpectedly. It turned out that happiness was so simple. Even walking in the rain with your sweetheart could fill your heart with happiness. She had been married to him for 3 months, and it could be said that the two of them were inseparable. For the first month, she stayed in the Fanteon Palace with him. He handled the official documents of the Fanteon Palace for her while she sat beside him, eating melon seeds and reading books. The books in this era were naturally not as complicated as the books in the modern era, nor were they as melodramatic and interesting as the novels in the modern era. Most of them were plays between scholars and beauties. Generally, Ning Shuema would doze off and fall asleep after reading them, and every time she woke up, she would be in his arms. He was half-hugging her, and that warm embrace made her sleep exceptionally comfortable. In the next 2 months, Shunjili often took her out to travel the 6 realms. The two of them climbed mountains together, swam across the sea together, and walked around the world together as ordinary people. His days were rather carefree. In these 3 months, some changes had quietly occurred in the 6 realms. The celestial ruler of the celestial world had disappeared for a long time and did not appear again. Some fortune tellers said that the celestial ruler was most likely dead. The celestial world could not be without a leader, so a new celestial ruler had to be appointed. With the secret help of Ning Shuema and Shun Jiuli, the candidate for the new celestial ruler fell on Yi Tianli's head. As for the emperor of the mortal world, the golden throne was also changed. The original emperor of the mortal world became the retired emperor with no real power and retired to enjoy the rest of his life. Only the demon world had been in chaos since Shui Ilan's death. Chapter 23:36. Mo Palace's general manager, Himu, often sent letters up, saying that the demon world was starting to fight for the throne again. He begged Devil Master to appoint a king for the demon world to change the chaotic situation of the demon world. Ning Shuema didn't comment, and only told him to wait. This wait had lasted until now. Ning Shuema raised her head to look at Shun Jili. His complexion was very good, and he looked like he had completely recovered. Maybe she could beg him to do something, but would he agree? After all, he had a knot in his heart towards that person. Shun Jili suddenly stopped and turned his head to look at her. Shuema, do you have something to say to me? Ning Shuema paused for a moment and finally nodded. Great God, I want to ask you for a favor. What is it? Look at how chaotic the demon world is now. Fighting here and there. It's not good. Shun Juli's gaze moved, and he said with a smile that wasn't a smile, so Ning Shuema sighed. So it's time to appoint a king for the demon world. Furthermore, it has to be a king that can suppress the demon world with one move. It's best if this person is very experienced. Shun Jiuli was still indifferent. In that case, who does Shuema think is more suitable? Ning Shuema raised her eyes to look at Shun Jiuli and said sincerely, Great God, I feel that Shui Ilan is very experienced in being a demon king and is very suitable. Shun Jiuli's gaze turned to her face. Isn't Shui Ilan's soul already scattered? Ning Shuema took in a light breath and looked at him with hope. Great God has a way to revive him, right? Back then, Mother Earth had said that only a god could revive Shui Ilan. Now that the god had returned, Shui Ilan should be saved, right? Although she didn't have any feelings for Shui Ilan, he had died for her. How could she bear to let his soul dissipate? Shunjili looked at her for a moment. Ning Shuama knew that he had a knot in his heart about Shuilan. She was afraid that he would not agree. So she hugged his arm and explained, Guru, I know you have a knot in your heart about Shuilan, but he died for you, didn't he? Shunjili cut her off. The Almighty was so smart. Ning Shuama nodded. He died too tragically. Every time I think about it, I feel that I have let him down. Shunjili looked at her and slowly opened his mouth. Shuama, if there was a woman who once stood between you and me, and she let you down but saved my life, if she died to save me, and only you have the ability to save her, would you save her? Ning Shuama. Did she have the magnanimity to do so? She thought of Lizine. Lizine had indeed harmed her, and even formed a huge obstacle between her and Shunjili. However, Lizine had indeed treated Shunjili well and saved his life. If Lizine died to save Shunjili, and Shunjili begged her to save her, would she have a knot in her heart? Would she make a move? Probably not, right? The situation had been reversed. Now that she had asked Shunjili to save Shui Ilan, Shunjili would probably be unwilling to do so. To Shunjili, it was true that Shunjili had forced him to do this. Don't impose on others what you don't want done to you. She looked at Shunjili's eyes that were gradually dimming. She forced a smile. If that's the case, then, just as she was about to say, then forget it, Shunjili cut her off. I will save him. Ning Shuama's eyes immediately lit up. She looked at him with sparkling eyes. Shuama, other than me, I don't want you to owe anyone. Ning Shuama's heart was filled with warmth. The Almighty had really thought of everything for her. Chapter 23:37. Ning Shuama's heart warmed slightly. The great deity really thought of everything for her. He was afraid that she would have a knot in her heart. Even if she hated that person, he would still save them. She really liked the great deity who had such noble character and unquestionable integrity. She couldn't help but kiss him on the lips. Thank you, Almighty. Shunjili hugged her tightly and deepened the kiss. Shuama, I've told you before that you don't have to be polite with me. The rainstorm hit the umbrella and made a crackling sound. Under the umbrella, the two of them were completely lost in their kiss. So what if the storm was heavy? As long as the two of them could be together, they could face the storm together. Ning Shuama was grateful to the Almighty, so she was particularly engrossed in the kiss. Shunjili hugged his passionate wife with a smile in his eyes. If one owed someone, they would remember that person forever. He didn't want his wife to think about another man forever. The two of them were newlyweds, so such a passionate kiss could easily ignite a certain passion. His hands began to move around her body restlessly. When Ning Shuama realized it, her belt had already been untied by him. God, they were in the wild. Small monsters could pass by at any time. Ning Shuama hurriedly grabbed his messy hand. Don't do it here. After she finished speaking, she suddenly felt that something was wrong. She turned her eyes to look and discovered that they were already inside a milky white barrier. Shunjili pushed her down on a soft blanket. If you want to thank me, use this. I won't accept anything else. Having a man who could set up a wizardry barrier and build a love nest at what was really too shameless. She panted and resisted him. You haven't put into action yet. Wasn't it too early to ask for compensation? Shunjili easily removed her resistance and pinned her down. Aren't we putting into action? He asked. Ning Shuama was speechless. He deliberately misunderstood her. The dark underground, the swaying forest of thorns, everything seemed to have happened yesterday. That day, Shuilan was dragged into the ground here. Not even a bone was left behind. Ning Shuama stood on the shore, slightly lost in thought. She had been to this place before and had tried to summon Shui Ilan's soul using the soul summoning technique, but to no avail. Now, her only hope was Shunjili. When she came here that day, she was all alone and her heart was filled with despair. Now, Shunjili was by her side. Although it was still a dark place, her heart was filled with warmth. Shuama, his soul has been scattered. Even if I manage to gather his soul with my divine power, he may not be in perfect condition. He may not be able to remember what happened in the past. Shenjuli said bluntly. Ning Xiuma nodded. I understand. She only wanted Shui Lan to be resurrected. It was a good thing that he could not remember what happened in the past. She hoped that he could have a life that belonged to him, a love that truly belonged to him. Shenjuli glanced at Ning Xiuma and knew what she was thinking from her expression. He was relieved. He knew that Ning Xiuma did not have any feelings for Shui Lan. However, if Shui Lan was resurrected and still had his memories, it would not be a good thing for either of them. So, Shenjuli began to cast the spell. 2 hours later, a faint red soul condensed at the tip of his finger. One could barely make out the appearance of the soul when it was alive. At this moment, its eyes were closed and it swayed at the tip of his finger, as if it would dissipate at any moment. Chapter 2338. Ning Xiuma looked at the familiar soul from the side, and her heart skipped a beat. It was Shui Lan. It was his soul. However, his soul looked very fragile, as if it could be blown away with a single breath. Ning Xiuma's tone was a little worried. His soul has been gone for too long. Although I have gathered most of it for him, a part of it has disappeared forever. I can't gather it back together again. Shenjuli explained to her in a low voice. Then what's the consequence? He won't become a fool, right? Shenjuli shook his head slightly. His soul is incomplete. The part of his soul that is responsible for his memories has disappeared forever. If you want to revive him, you have to mend his soul. However what? After all, the soul that you mend is not his original body. Even if he wakes up in the future, I'm afraid he will be like a newborn baby. He won't remember anything of the past, like a piece of white paper. That would be a complete rebirth, right? It's good that he doesn't have all his memories. Even if he doesn't have any memories, with his intelligence and wisdom, he will still be able to accomplish something in the future. In a crystal coffin. Inside the coffin, there was a man in a green robe. His eyes were slightly closed, as if he was sleeping. There were countless strange charms drawn on the coffin. Those charms were circulating inside the coffin, reflecting his beautiful face like a painting. Ning Xiuma looked at the man in the coffin, and then looked at Shenjuli beside her. Great God! Why did you let him wear this set of clothes? Shui Lan had always been wearing red robes. Now, Shenjuli had let him wear a normal green robe. It looked a little strange. Shenjuli glanced at her. Ning Xiuma was still wearing red. Did he have to give his love rival matching outfits? It was already good enough that he gave his love rival a set of clothes to cover his body. At least he didn't let this guy enter the coffin naked. He was already merciful. Shenjuli raised his hand and closed the lid of the coffin. He didn't answer Ning Xiuma's question. Instead, he used his hands to draw a series of characters in the air. A moment later, a huge whirlpool appeared in the sky. Then, the crystal coffin containing Shui Lan flew straight into the whirlpool and disappeared without a trace. Ning Xiuma didn't know what he was trying to do. What are you doing? His soul is incomplete, so he needs to enter a different world to repair it. I have already sent him to a different world, where he will be resurrected at an appropriate time and begin his life. Shenjuli explained to her. Afraid that she would be worried, he casually created a spatial mirror, which clearly showed the coffin's whereabouts. What was shown in the mirror was an island, a lonely island. The island was covered in lush trees, and the crystal coffin fell on the highest open space on the island. There were countless tombs on this open space, but the tombstones were very old and weathered. The crystal coffin fell among such tombs. The tombs were overgrown with weeds. After the crystal coffin fell, perhaps it was attracted by the spiritual power on the crystal coffin, but the weeds automatically grew in the direction of the crystal coffin. Countless vines slowly climbed up the coffin and gradually covered the entire crystal coffin. From afar, it looked like a small emerald greenhouse, but the doors and windows couldn't be seen. What was this place? What world was it? Ning Xiuma was about to take a closer look at the words on the tombstones when the spatial mirror suddenly shook and disappeared. Ning Xiuma was shocked. She was about to ask something, but Shenjuli had already put his arm on her shoulder and leaned on her. Chapter 2339. Ning Shuima originally wanted to ask where it was, but she was shocked to see Shun Julie like this. She quickly held him and asked, "Almighty, what happened to you?" Shun Julie's face was slightly pale. He closed his eyes and said, "Shuima, I'm a little tired. Let me rest." Ning Shuima thought of his hard work in the past 2 days to revive Shuelon. First, he condensed his soul, then shaped his body. Then, he made a crystal coffin full of spiritual power and sent the crystal coffin to the strange world. The Almighty had worked too hard. No wonder he was so tired. Looking at his pale appearance, Ning Shuima's heart felt both sour and soft. After thinking for a bit, she straightforwardly hugged him. "Great God, let's go back. You need to rest." The best place in the world for the Almighty to rest was the Fantion Palace. Ning Shuima immediately carried him and ran back. She was now a devil master, and her psychokinesis was amazing. Not to mention carrying a person, she could even carry a mountain. She actually carried him like a princess. Shun Julie laughed in his heart. If anyone saw a divine god being carried by a lady, they would be so shocked that their eyeballs would fall out of their sockets. However, he didn't care about this. He was very satisfied that Ning Shuima was so worried about him. He thought of the graveyard shown in the space mirror and coughed softly. He actually didn't expect to throw Shuelon there. Originally, he just wanted to throw him to a strange world mountain full of spiritual power to recuperate. He didn't expect to throw him to the abandoned land of gods. It was far away from the mainland and was a place abandoned by gods. There was no one in a radius of thousands of miles. Well, the road to Shuelon's resurrection would be very, very long. He had set a spell on Shuelon's coffin. The person who opened his coffin would be the person who could wake him up and was also his fated person. In such a desolate place, it was harder to find a fated person than to win the lottery. Of course, he would not explain this to his wife. In any case, what he had done had indeed gathered Shuelon's soul, giving him a chance to be reborn. Now, it all depended on whether he had the fortune to do so. He lay comfortably in Ning Shuima's arms. In order to make it easier for Ning Shuima to hug him, he deliberately made himself smaller. Tired, of course, she was a little tired, but it was far from the point where she needed someone to carry her. However, since it was rare for him to enjoy such benefits, he might as well enjoy it for a while longer. He raised his hand and quietly placed an invisibility talisman on the two of them. This way, no one would see them. By the time he returned to Fantion Palace, it was already evening. The sky was dyed red by the rosy clouds, and the barrier in the air seemed to be covered in a layer of rainbow light. Ning Shuima stopped in front of the barrier. Looking at the color of the wizardry barrier, it seemed that her son had not broken out yet. "Master, Nyima is not broken out yet. Don't you think the array you set this time is too difficult?" Ning Shuima was a little worried. Shunjili also stared at the array for a while. It was as if he could see the scenery inside through the rolling clouds outside the array. That brat was about to break out. He had a bright future. He thought that the boy would have to explore in the array for a month. He did not expect that the boy had already found the way out after only 10 days. He will be out soon. Don't worry. In less than 3 days, he will appear in front of you alive and well. Shun Juli comforted his wife. Ning Shuima knew that he could see the situation inside the array. When she heard what he said, she was finally relieved. She carried Shun Juli and rushed to the quiet room. Go to the quiet room and meditate to recover. Chapter 2340. Shun Juli's quiet room was the place with the most spiritual aura in the entire Fantion Palace. He had consumed a lot of energy, so it was best for him to meditate there. Shun Juli did not object. In order to save Shuelon, he had used up a quarter of his divine power. He really needed to recover. 3 days, just 3 days. The water was clear and bright, but the mountain was empty and the rain was wonderful. It was a metaphor for the West Lake, but it was also very appropriate to use it to describe the misty lake in the Fantion Palace. Ning Shuima was sitting by the lake and fishing. She wanted to wait for Shun Juli and her son to come out so that she could nourish their bodies. The fish in the lake were not easy to catch. It required a person's concentration. Ning Xiuma was a little restless today. In the bucket next to her, there was only a fish blowing bubbles. Before the Almighty went into isolation, he said that he would only need 3 days to come out. However, 5 days had passed, and he did not seem to want to come out at all. The door of the quiet room was always closed. Shun Jili hated to be disturbed when he was in isolation. Therefore, Ning Xiuma did not dare to break the door to see him. She did not want to cause him to go crazy. As for little Nianma, he was still in the array and did not show any signs of coming out. Fortunately, she had put a spell on her son. If her son was really in danger, she would be able to immediately sense it. Although she could not see what danger her son was in, she could feel that he was not uncomfortable except for a little tiredness. If that was the case, there was no need for her to break the array to save him. As for her son, it was better for him to exercise more. Ning Xiuma felt a little lonely in the Fantian Palace when her husband and son were not around. Fortunately, she had a lot of interests. She did not feel that the time was very long. The first 3 days were relatively easy because she was mentally prepared to wait for 3 days. After 3 days, she was a little anxious and felt that the time was extraordinarily long. Unknowingly, 5 days had passed. Seeing that the sun was about to set, the Almighty still did not show any signs of movement. She absent-mindedly fished for another 2 hours, but still did not find anything. She sighed. Forget it. His mind was restless today, and he was afraid that he would not be able to catch any fish. It would be the same even if he tried again tomorrow. Just as she was about to put away the fishing rod, the hook suddenly sank. A big fish had taken a bait. Ning Xiuma was overjoyed and hurriedly reeled in the fishing line. Ning Xiuma did not know the size of the fish that had bitten the hook. She only felt that the hook was very heavy. Even the fishing rod was bent like a bow. Looking at the weight, it was probably a few dozen caddies. It was enough for the father and son to eat. Ning Xiuma neatly retracted the hook. A moment later, she fished something out of the water. When Ning Xiuma saw the appearance of the thing, her hands trembled and she almost shook it into the water again. It was a shiny white stone with runes flashing on it. Heavenly Tao Stone. Ning Xiuma had not seen it since it ran away from her on Shun Juli's wedding. She did not expect that she would be able to fish it out of the lake. The Heavenly Tao Stone turned slightly on her hook and flew straight up. It landed neatly in front of Ning Xiuma. Ning Xiuma looked at it and guessed, "Did you accidentally fall in the water?" The Heavenly Tao Stone was speechless. "I'm a Heavenly Tao Stone. How could I accidentally fall into the water? I automatically entered the water to hide from you. Don't make wild guesses." The Heavenly Tao Stone angrily replied. Ning Xiuma smiled. She had been a little bored these days and had not bickered with the stone for a long time. Now that she saw it, she felt a little familiar with it and chatted with it for a while. This time, the Heavenly Tao Stone's words were unfathomable. Every word seemed to carry a Zen meaning. What did it mean by defying nature and changing one's fate? What did it mean by going against nature? Ning Xiuma was confused. Chapter 2341. She faintly felt that something was amiss. Just as she was about to ask for more details, the Heavenly Lost Stone spiraled up, and a line of words appeared in Ning Xiuma's mind. "If you are in a difficult situation, you can come and find me." After saying that, it disappeared. Ning Xiuma was speechless. The Heavenly Past Stone would not speak without reason. Ning Xiuma could not hold it in any longer. She threw the fishing rod and flew directly to the quiet room where Shun Jili was. There was still no movement in the quiet room. Even the wizardry barrier outside the quiet room was still there. Although the wizardry barrier was very powerful, it was not difficult for Ning Xiuma, who was used to breaking wizardry barriers. When she broke the wizardry barrier, the Almighty in the quiet room would feel it. However, the feeling was not strong, so it should not have a big impact on him. Ning Xiuma tried to knock on the wizardry barrier to give some movement inside. After waiting for a while, she started to break the barrier. After a while, the wizardry barrier disappeared. She pushed the door open and walked in slowly. Then she stood there in a daze. In the quiet room, Shun Julie was meditating on the cattail hassock. She could not see his figure. However, there was a huge white jade lotus bud. The flower bud was layered and shone with a seven-colored luster. Ning Shuima stood there in a daze for a while. Then, she slowly walked forward and touched the flower bud with her fingers. She called out softly, "Almighty." The flower bud trembled slightly. It did not bloom. Instead, the petals moved closer to the center. This scene was incomparably strange. Ning Shuima sighed. Her fingers didn't leave the flower bud as she once again spoke in a low voice. "Great God, you and I are husband and wife. No matter what you become, I can accept it. What is there that you can't let go of? If there is a problem, we can solve it together, okay?" Although her voice was low, it was very clear. Naturally, it was transmitted to the flower bud. After a while, a young voice came from the flower bud. "Shuima, send me to the misty lake." Although the voice was young, there was a kind of hoarseness in it. Ning Shuima's heart ached. Needless to say, the Almighty had turned into a baby again. Lotuses needed to be nourished by water, yet they were growing on this praying mat. No wonder the petals looked so weak. "Okay." Ning Shuima picked it up from the futon. "Don't let anyone see." The tender voice warned again. "I understand, don't worry." Ning Shuima simply put it into the storage space, then left the quiet room and went straight to the misty lake. The misty lake was vast and incomparably vast. One couldn't see the end of it with a single glance. The lake was rich in spiritual qi, and even the fish in the lake were more intelligent than the fish outside. Qiongqi and Tung, she were bathing in the lake in their original forms. They were swimming around in the lake, looking very comfortable. Suddenly, they saw Ning Shuima flying over and standing by the lakeside. The two mythological beasts thought that she wanted to fish again, so they immediately jumped into the water and drove the fish from the bottom of the lake to her side. This was what they often did. Ning Shuima was fishing, and they were playing in the water. They didn't interfere with each other. Unexpectedly, Ning Shuima didn't come to fish this time. Instead, she directly jumped into the lake. The two mythological beasts were shocked. They didn't dare to bathe with her. If the Divine Lord knew, he would directly turn them into stone statues. The two mythological beasts hurriedly swam to the shore. Then, they looked at Ning Shuima, who was in the water, in surprise. "Devil Lord." Ning Shuima smiled at them and said leisurely, "I want to take a good bath. Do you want to take a look?" As she spoke, she slowly took off her coat. Chapter 2342. The two mythical beasts were so scared that they almost fell back into the water. "Devil Master, please bathe, please bathe. We will clear the area for you." The two mythical beasts ran away like lightning. Not only did they run away, but they also warned other mythical beasts that wanted to bathe in the lake not to disturb them. The two mythical beasts were afraid that their divine madam's body would be seen by others, so they automatically took up the task of guarding the lake and chased away all creatures that might come close to the misty lake. "Almighty God, I have cleared the area for you. You can come out and recover." Ning Shuima took out the huge flower bud from the storage space and placed it on the water surface. An hour later, the originally withered and somewhat dim flower bud finally became sparkling and translucent, as if it had absorbed enough water. The petals opened up slightly. Ning Shuima had been guarding it by its side. Seeing that, she was slightly relieved. She touched the flower bud with her finger and asked, "Almighty God, are you feeling better?" "I'm feeling better." A young voice came from the flower bud. Even the voice was not as hoarse as before. It was much clearer. "Almighty God, what is going on? Can you tell me now?" Ning Shuima was full of curiosity. When she carried the Almighty God into the quiet room, he was just a little weak and did not look like he was going to turn into a flower bud. Why did he go back after cultivating for 6 days? There was no response from the flower bud for a while. After a while, the young voice finally said, "I don't know. Originally, I could recover after cultivating for 3 days. But on the 3rd day, my body became weak, and I became like this. Could it be that he went crazy after cultivating for 3 days?" Or did he use too much of his divine power to revive Shui Ilan and became exhausted? Ning Xiumal felt a little guilty. If she did not let the Almighty revive Shui Ilan, perhaps this would not have happened to him. She looked at the flower bud and could not help but sigh. Almighty God, why didn't you call me when something like this happened? Also, you should be able to recover faster in the water. Why are you cooped up in the quiet room and not coming out? If he came out earlier and soaked in a misty lake, the Almighty would be able to recover faster. I thought I would be able to recover after cultivating for a few more days. I didn't want you to worry about me. The voice in the bud sounded a little muffled. As for why he didn't come out earlier to soak in the misty lake, it was because he knew that the 8 mythological beasts were bathing in the lake almost every day. If he were to come out as a lotus flower, he might be eaten by the 8 mythological beasts. Of course, he could open his mouth inside the flower bud, but that would expose his real body. Moreover, he really didn't want to expose his childish appearance in front of the 8 divine beasts. Therefore, he had been enduring in the quiet room and cultivating. The more he cultivated, the more shriveled the flower bud became, until the moment Ning Xiumal barged in. Ning Xiumal was a little angry. Guru, we agreed that we'd share blessings and hardships together. You cannot tell me when you're in trouble. Whenever she was in trouble, the first person she thought of was the Almighty God. He had also saved her countless times and helped her solve countless problems. Now that he was in trouble, how could he not tell her? How could he bear it alone? Husband and wife were of the same mind. Did he really see her as a wife that he could rely on? If he could shelter her from the wind and rain, she could also shelter him from the wind and rain. The flower bud flickered with a faint light. Yes, Xiumal, I was wrong. Chapter 2343. The great god actually apologized to her. Ning Xiumal's heart softened, and all her anger disappeared. She looked at the flower bud, and a ball of curiosity rose in her heart. What did the great god look like now? Did he still look like the ginseng child when they met at Heavenly Book Mountain? She was actually quite cute when he looked like that. Great god, can you let me see you? Ning Xiumal saw that the flower bud was becoming more and more translucent, and knew that he was showing signs of improvement. Her curiosity was piqued. There was no movement from the flower bud. Ning Xiumal looked at it for a while, and finally gave up. Forget it if you don't want to. The great god was used to being high and mighty, and he was used to being dignified and domineering. It was indeed a challenge for him to show his adorable baby face in front of others. But she really wanted to see him again. The little Nine Zun from back then, the little Nine Zun that she had treated as a ginseng child and had gone through some trials with her. She really wanted to see him again, but since the great god was not willing, she did not want to force him. Just as she finished speaking, the flower bud actually opened slightly, and then a hand stretched out from inside. It was a small hand with 4 little dimples on the back of it. The hand was indeed small, about the size of a 4 to 5-month-old child, and it looked like it was carved out of white jade. Ning Xiumal stared blankly. The hand was so small, like a lotus root melon, making her want to pick it up and take a bite. Disaster. The great god was really a disaster. He had become small, and even his hand could grow so alluring. What was he if not a disaster? Ning Xiumal could not help but reach out and poke the small hand with a finger. The small hand immediately held her finger. That scene was exceptionally comical and harmonious. Even Ning Xiumal herself was about to be melted by this scene. She really wanted to grab the hand and pull the child out, and then hug him in her arms and give him a few kisses. Ning Xiumal only felt a surge of motherly love in her heart. Xiumal, a young voice came from the flower bud. Ning Xiumal subconsciously softened her voice. If you see my original body, you'll have to pay a real price. Do you want to see the whole thing? The voice of the boy in the bud was as tender as the sound of nature, but the words he said made Ning Xiumal shiver uncontrollably. She thought of the price she had paid in those days. She was kneaded in all kinds of shapes by him, as if he was kneading dough. His endurance, his transformation. What's the real price? Ning Xiumal asked fearlessly. Xiumal, I've been married to you for a few months, but I haven't really enjoyed myself to the fullest. It was obviously a child's voice, but the words he spoke carried a hint of the evilness of an adult. I'll let you see it all once, and you'll let me really enjoy myself once in the future. How about that? Ning Xiuma, she laughed dryly and decisively withdrew her hand. She said firmly, Great God, I think I should give you some face. I won't look at your original body. Come, you can continue to cultivate. I'll be your guard. The small hand in the bud had no intention of withdrawing. Are you sure? I'm sure. I'm absolutely certain. Ning Xiuma patted the little hand. Be good. Go and properly cultivate. He had not enjoyed himself to the fullest, but her back was already aching. If he enjoyed himself to the fullest, she would probably be unable to get out of bed for a few days. There was a chuckle from the flower bud, and it finally stopped talking, because the area had already been cleared and Ning Xiuma was standing guard at the side. The lotus bud was able to focus on cultivating in the water without any misgivings. Chapter 23:44. 2 hours had passed. 4 hours had passed. Half a day had passed. A day had passed. Then, another night had passed. Ning Xiuma had been guarding him in the water and did not step on the shore. Shun Juli tried to persuade her to go back to the room to rest, but Ning Xiuma shook her head and refused. She wanted to protect him until he recovered. Of course, she did not stay idle in the water. The big lotus that Shun Juli was in was full of spiritual power. It attracted the fishes and prawns in the lake who wanted to suck the spiritual power from the lotus. However, Ning Xiuma managed to drive them away in time. In fact, Shun Juli could also set up a wizardry barrier, but if he did so, his recovery speed would be a few times slower. Now that he had Ning Xiuma by his side, he only needed to focus on his practice. While Ning Xiuma was guarding him, she also paid attention to her son's condition. The little thing did not break out of the barrier, but his life was not in danger. She guessed that he was still fighting inside. Little Nianma had already fought 2 battles in the barrier. He knew that the barrier was set up by his father. Although the beasts looked fierce, they would not really kill him. At most, they would hurt him and make him roll a few times. Therefore, when little Nianma encountered the beasts in the rainforest, he was not really afraid. He only needed to use his sword skills. He thought that this situation would continue until the day he broke out of the barrier. However, he did not expect to encounter a tough opponent. For example, the black python that suddenly appeared. The black python seemed to be living a good life in the rainforest. Its scales were round and crystal like jade. It was not the biggest, but once it curled up, it was enough to wrap around little Nianma twice. However, little Nianma fell hard when he was wrapped around by it. The black python was as fast as lightning. It could even spit out poisonous fog. Little Nianma was a little slow in fighting with it, so it wrapped around him. The black python wrapped around his body twice and then tightened its grip in the middle. As everyone knew, once a python wrapped around its prey, it would desperately squeeze the prey's heart until it stopped beating or burst. Once little Nianma was entangled by it, he was immediately suffocated by its enormous strength. His little face turned red. He struggled with all his might, but his hands were also entangled by the black python, so he couldn't break free. The snake was getting tighter and tighter. Little Nianma felt dizzy, and his heart was about to explode. His vision turned black, and his face gradually turned pale. However, the snake still did not intend to let him go. It was serious. Little Nianma immediately realized that if he did not think of a way to escape, he would really be entangled by the black python. If the son of a god and a devil were to die in the hands of a black python, that would be too shameful. Once a person's life was threatened, he would be able to unleash his full potential. Little Nianma was no exception. In his panic, he actually learned the bone shrinking technique without anyone teaching him. His body instantly shrunk to half its original size. Taking advantage of the fact that the black python had yet to react, he tapped the tip of his foot and soared into the sky. Little Nianma had never suffered such a big loss before. Once he was free, his eyes turned red. At the same time, the black python was enraged when the food that it was about to eat suddenly flew away. It stretched its body and chased after little Nianma. Obviously, it did not want to let him go. Although little Nianma did not understand why such a ferocious creature appeared in his father's array, he knew that he had to die. Now, he knew that it was time for him to die. He could not afford to have a glimmer of hope. He also risked his life. Chapter 23:45. He was a genius in spells, so he did not pay much attention to physical training. He had only learned a few of the special footwork that his mother had taught him before. Now that he was in a life-or-death situation, the footwork that his mother had taught him was particularly clear in his mind. He immediately performed according to it. At first, he was not very familiar with it, but after a while, he finally became more flexible and faster. Ning Xuema's footwork was originally a set of footwork for escaping. Once she performed it, even the gods could not catch her. Now, little Nianma was performing the footwork on the black python. He was swimming around the black python. It looked very dangerous, but the black python could not even touch a corner of his clothes. After a while, little Nianma finally figured out the black python's movements. Finally, he changed from defense to offense and began to attack the black python's weak spot. After an hour, the black python's weak spot had been stabbed several times. Blood was flowing out, and its movement was getting slower and slower. Finally, he cut off the python's head, and it died on the ground. Little Nianma was so tired that he panted. He sat on the ground and stared at the black python's body in a daze. Once he killed the ferocious beasts in the jungle, they would disappear instantly. Only the harmless animals were real. Now, such a fierce and poisonous black python was also real. This time, he was afraid that he would have become the black python's food if he was a little slower. More importantly, the black python was highly poisonous. If he did not have the antidote with him, he would be dead this time. Such a dangerous thing could not be released by his father, could it? Who could it be? Little Nianma finally remembered the mysterious man with the ghost face. He clenched his little fists. Needless to say, this black python should be released by that guy. That guy must not be dead. Now, he was hiding in a corner and watching him fight for his life. Was that guy Luo Jiuchen? He could not defeat the Divine Lord and the Great Devil. So he secretly came in to plot against him. That guy knew how to possess a body. Could it be that he wanted to kill him and then possess him to plot against his parents? The more little Nianma thought about it, the more likely it was. His whole body was alert. He must not let this person's conspiracy succeed. He had to escape from here and report this matter to his parents. He kicked the black python that couldn't be any more dead, then rubbed his rumbling belly. He steeled his heart and killed the snake. The snake's skin was pitch black, but its flesh was milky white. It was as translucent as the finest cheese. Little Nianma cut off the most delicious part of the python and started a fire to roast it. This time, no one fought with him for food. The snake meat was fresh and delicious, and it was unprecedentedly delicious. He happily ate until he was full. After eating, he only felt that his body's strength had doubled, and his fighting spirit was high. Then he strode away. Not long after he left, the mysterious man with the ghost face appeared. He bent down to check the pile of snake meat and skin. He shook his head slightly and looked at the direction where little Nianma left. The little guy was smart enough, and his ability to react on the spot was also very strong. However, it was still not enough. He closed his eyes and waved his hand in the air. A moment later, there was a buzzing sound in the air, and a large black thing rushed into the rainforest. It had a human face, cat ears, and a black bat body. When it spread its wings, it was as big as a basketball. This was the second wave of monsters that little Nianma encountered. Chapter 23:46. The monster looked ferocious, and the fangs in its mouth were like 2 rows of sawtooth. Little Nianma saw with his own eyes that the strange bat bit a big blue stone and directly chewed the big blue stone into powder. He had no doubt that if he was bitten by this thing, it would definitely tear off a piece of flesh. What was worse was that this monster was not just one, but a group of this kind of monster. Little Nianma was surrounded by a dense swarm of hornets, and he felt as if he had poked a bat's nest. Looking at the dense green eyes around him, little Nianma had goosebumps all over his arms. He had slight trypophobia. With so many bats surrounding him, not to mention attacking him, he felt his scalp go numb. Little Nianma looked at the group of strange bats, and for a moment, he could not figure out whether they were real or simulated by the array formation. He could not run away, so he could only fight. The sword in his hand was swinging like a wheel, and he looked for a place where there were fewer bats and rushed over. The sword in his hand was a magical weapon. Even if the ferocious beast had copper skin and iron bones, it would still be cut by his sword. However, when his sword cut the body of the bats, it was as if he was cutting the body of the bats in the water. The body of the bats was so flexible that even if he cut it, there was no wound. There were too many bats, and they attacked from all directions. There was a slight flaw in little Nianma's sword, and a bat took advantage of it and bit on the clothes on his chest. The clothes melted quickly as if it was corroded by sulfuric acid. Little Nianma was shocked and did not have time to think. He swung his hand and threw away the clothes on his body. In this way, he only had a doo-doo and a pair of underwear on his body, revealing his white little arms. He looked like a boy in a painting. During the fight, little Nianma's arm was bitten by a bat. Although he was able to slap the bat away in time, a little bit of flesh was still torn and green blood flowed out. The wound was even more painful, and it made little Nianma cry out in a low voice. He almost wanted to stomp his feet. If his parents or someone to protect him were around, little Nianma was afraid that he would scream. But now, no matter how serious the injury was, he could only rely on himself. He didn't even have the time to shout. He swallowed an antidote pill and continued to fight. He was already in the middle of the formation and surrounded by the rainforest. No matter where he ran, he would not be able to escape the pursuit of these bats. And in this damned array, he couldn't use his telekinesis. Obviously, these bats were not prepared by his father, but by the mysterious ghost-faced person. Shin Nianma hated the mysterious person to the core. He had been fighting with the bats for a while, but none of them were missing. Instead, he was panting from exhaustion. This won't do. If this went on, once his strength was exhausted, he would become a delicious meal for these bats. During the fight, Shin Nianma realized that these bats were not afraid of the sword, but they seemed to be afraid of fire. Once a bat got close to the kindling wood, it would immediately fly away. If only he could use his telekinesis, he could use fire attacks. In such a fight, he could hardly see any hope. There were too many bats, and soon there were new wounds on his body. There were a few more bloody wounds on both of his arms, and even his underwear was torn into a beggar's pants. It was almost exposed. Chapter 23:47. Fortunately, the bats that tore off his underwear were using their wings. Otherwise, little Nianma would have had to take off his underwear to prevent his skin from being corroded. On the trunk of a large tree, the black-clothed, devil-faced man was sitting there, watching the great battle below. This should be considered as pushing him to the extreme, right? If he was really that person, he should have awakened long ago instead of using such a stupid method of fight. He raised his hand and knocked on the jade on his waist. Actually, you have mistaken him for someone else. How could that person be such a child? He sighed softly and looked at the child who was fighting desperately. Forget it. He did not want to play with him anymore. If he really played with the child's life, the couple would definitely come after him. He raised his hand and was about to do something when he suddenly saw a ray of golden light burst out from little Nianma's body. Although the golden light was very weak, it was still seen by the mysterious man. He was suddenly stunned and withdrew his hand. He looked at the child who was fighting desperately with a complicated expression. The golden light on little Nianma's body also frightened the strange bats. A few of them even screamed and fell to the ground. They twitched a few times and died. Little Nianma felt that there was an inexplicable force in his body when he was fighting desperately. That was why the golden light flashed. When he saw that the golden light was effective, he immediately tried to sense the inexplicable force again. However, he did not expect that the inexplicable force would disappear as well. When he wanted to use it, he could not find it. He occasionally glanced at it during the fight and suddenly saw the man in black sitting on the treetop, not far away. He immediately clenched his fists. Sure enough, it was this person who was playing tricks. Seeing that the man curled his fingers and seemed to be about to do something, little Nianma turned his body and suddenly broke through the circle of bats. Like a bullet fired from a gun, he collided with the mysterious man with the ghost face. He used all his strength in this collision, and his speed was very fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, he was in front of the man with the ghost face. Although the man with the ghost face was not prepared, after all, he was very skilled in kung fu. He slightly moved his body and dodged. However, he also realized that there was a big tree behind him. As he dodged, little Nianma's head flew toward the big tree and collided with it. If little Nianma was hit, he would be half dead even if his soul was not destroyed. With a wave of her hand, the ghostly face wrapped around little Nianma's waist and dragged him back. Unexpectedly, the child seemed to be waiting for him to make this move and actually borrowed the force to crash into his arms. This time, he could no longer dodge and was hit in the chest by the little fellow's fire arrow mallet. This time, it was as if he had been hit by a hammer. His chest felt heavy, and he almost fell from the treetop. With a flick of his hand, he pulled little Nianma's leg and threw him out. Little Nianma reacted quickly. He spun in the air and stabilized his body. He landed on the top of a tree and stared at the mysterious person with a grimace. He blurted out, "You are a woman." When he bumped in her chest just now, he felt something soft under his scalp, as if he had bumped into a soft mountain. The mysterious person with a grimace was speechless. She looked at the little guy coldly and finally said, "You are naked." Little Nianma was speechless. He subconsciously looked down and saw that his pants were completely gone. Chapter 23:48. Little Nianma was speechless. He subconsciously looked down and realized that his pants were gone. He was only left with a rolled-up doo-doo on his body. His body was completely exposed in front of the person. Although little Nianma was still young, he already knew how to behave. His little face blushed, and he quickly covered his private parts with his hands. When he looked up again, the person was gone. There was only a piece of cloth left on the spot. Little Nianma quickly took the cloth and shook it to make sure that it was not poisonous. He then wrapped it around his waist. At this time, the bats were also gone. Little Nianma was relieved. The mysterious person with the ghost face was actually a woman. This was truly beyond his expectations. Since it was a woman, it was not Luo Jiuchen. Then who could it be? Why did she come in and make things difficult for him? And it almost took his life. Little Nianma could not figure it out. But he was sure of one thing. This woman did not have good intentions toward him. He did not know what she was planning to do, and he did not have a good impression of this woman. A woman dressed as a man and covered her face with such a scary mask. Her real face must be very ugly, so she was psychopathic and came to bully a child like him. Little Nianma could not help but curse when he recalled the dirty tricks that this woman had used on him. Ugly monster, female pervert. Why do you always follow me around? There was only the sound of the wind in the rainforest. There was no other movement. The mysterious person with the ghost face did not show up, so it seemed that she had really left. Little Nianma was relieved and did not care about this matter anymore. He continued to look for the way. However, when he looked around, his mind was blown. He had just found the way out, but he didn't expect that in such a short time, the surrounding environment would actually change so drastically. It seemed that someone had added something to the original foundation of the array to make the array more complicated. Now, little Nianma could not find the way out again. He had to start from the beginning. Needless to say, all of this was the credit of the mysterious person with the ghost face. Little Nianma almost cursed the person's ancestors in his heart. Helplessly, he had to look for a way out again. On a big rock at the entrance of the array, the mysterious person in black stood facing the wind. Her clothes were fluttering in the wind. Her fingers gently touched the mask on her face. After a moment, she gently smiled. Ugly freak? Female pervert? This was the first time in the world that someone dared to scold her like this. She glanced at the array again. Suddenly, she raised her hand and rubbed her temples. She sighed. It's actually him. It seems that this mission is a little tricky. Her figure flashed and flew away, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Shun Julie soaked in the lake for a full 5 days before returning to normal. During these 5 days, Ning Shuima kept him company. Of course, she also told him some things, such as fishing and fishing for the heavenly Tao stone. Ning Shuima had a feeling that Shun Julie's transformation into a boy had something to do with the Zen words spoken by the heavenly stone. She shared her doubts with Shun Julie, but Shun Julie just hugged her and said, "You've worked hard these days. Let's go back and reward you." He casually caught a few fish and left with Ning Shuima. After the two of them left, the surface of the lake rippled again, and the head of the heavenly Tao stone emerged. There was a row of question marks on its body. Logically speaking, Shun Julie could not wait to find it and ask for the reason. Why did he not seem to be interested at all? Chapter 2349. Logically speaking, shouldn't Shun Julie be eager to find out the reason? Why didn't he seem to be interested at all? This was illogical. This person liked to play hard to get. Maybe he was playing hard to get this time. It wouldn't be fooled by him. If he didn't come to find it and say a lot of good things, it wouldn't reveal the secret to him. In less than 3 days, Shun Julie would definitely find its whereabouts. The heavenly lost stone bubbled in the water and sank to the bottom of the lake. It found that the spiritual power at the bottom of the lake was the thickest, and it was very comfortable there. More importantly, the lake could block its breath. If Shun Julie wanted to find it, it would take a few days, but the heavenly lost stone obviously miscalculated. 3 days had passed, and Shun Julie still didn't have the intention to find it. It didn't know what he was thinking. The heavenly lost stone couldn't hold it anymore. It thought that it was hiding too well, so Shun Julie couldn't find it for a while. Then it wouldn't hide anymore. The heavenly lost stone was the highest existence, and it wouldn't lower itself to the guardian's level. So the heavenly lost stone jumped out of the misty lake and returned to the lonely peak where it used to live. There, it waited for Shun Julie's arrival. It stood on the lonely peak for 3 days in the cold wind, but Shun Julie still didn't show up. Could it be that he had found this place before, so he didn't come again? It was dark under the light. The more the heavenly lost stone thought about it, the more it thought about it. So it moved in the night and landed directly in front of Shun Julie's bedroom. Now, he couldn't possibly not see it, right? Of course, it didn't want him to laugh at it for sending itself to the door. So it landed behind a rock on the left side of the door of the bedroom. It squeezed among several rocks, indicating that it was here to enjoy the scenery. It listened carefully. The bedroom was quiet, which meant that the couple hadn't returned yet. These few days, the couple lived very comfortably. They traveled together and stayed together, almost inseparable. Probably because the child was still in the array, the two of them didn't leave the Fanteon Palace and stayed at home. But even if they didn't go out, the two of them still lived happily. They played chess, played the zither, fished, and even taught her how to draw. The love between the two of them simply made the eyes of the 8 mythological beasts blue with envy. It was a pity that the 8 mythological beasts were all male beasts. Otherwise, they would also want to form a pair and live a happy life. The heavenly lost stone stood among a pile of rocks. Occasionally, it would hear the gossip of the 8 divine beasts as it passed by. It sneered in its heart. A supreme god and a devil lord had so many responsibilities on their shoulders. How could they live such an ordinary life? They were going to be busy soon. That night, the wizardry barrier in midair finally opened, and little Nianma fell straight to the ground. When he landed, it was around midnight, and the Fanteon Palace was quiet. He thought that his parents were already asleep and heaved a sigh of relief. He was about to run towards his Qingxiao Hall. Just as he turned around, he was stunned again. His parents were sitting in an octagonal pavilion not far away. There was a luminous pearl in the pavilion that reflected the soft light on the chessboard on the stone table. The black and white chess pieces on the board were fighting fiercely. At this moment, his father was holding a black chess piece in his hand and looking at him with a faint smile. His mother was holding her chin with her hand and waving at him lovingly. "Nianma, congratulations. You have finally passed the test. Come to mother." In the past, little Nianma couldn't wait to hear this. He was afraid that his mother would only need to beckon with her finger and directly rush over to her to ask for kisses and hugs. Chapter 2350. But now, little Nianma could not help but shrink back into the shadow. He even pulled down the piece of cloth that was wrapped around his waist. Little Nianma was actually very embarrassed at the moment. His upper body was wearing a small doudou that was badly worn and could not cover his belly. His lower body was wrapped tightly with a piece of cloth, revealing his white arms and legs. His little face was also covered with gray and white streaks. He looked like a little kitten. Little Nianma had his father's mysophobia genes in his bones. Usually, he would always be clean. His little robe was smooth on his body, and there would not be a single wrinkle on it. It was the first time for him to be as messy as a little beggar today. He felt a little embarrassed and did not want his parents to see him like this. When he was breaking the array, he was full of anger. He wanted to appear in front of his parents proudly after breaking the array. However, he did not expect that. Thus, he shrank back into the shadows again. Just as he was about to go back to his room, there was a gentle breeze in front of his eyes. His mother had already appeared in front of him. She picked him up and quickly looked him up and down. Then, she checked the injuries on his body. Her brows immediately furrowed. "Why are you in such a sorry state? Did the ferocious beasts really hurt you?" As she spoke, she glanced at her husband who was next to her. Shinjuli had personally told her that although there were ferocious beasts in the array, they would not really hurt little Nianma. He was scared but not in danger. But what was going on now? There were wounds on little Nianma's body. There were cuts, lacerations, and even pecks. Some of the wounds even looked very dangerous. If they were a little more to the side, they could have hurt his vital parts. Although Ning Xiaoma did not object to her husband's training of their son, when she saw her son injured like this, she was worried. She was about to treat her son. Shun Jili reached out his hand. Little Nianma, who was originally in Ning Xiaoma's arms, was dazzled. When he opened his eyes again, he was already in his father's arms. "Let me treat him." Shun Jili raised his hand to cast a cleaning spell on his son. Ning Xiaoma suddenly rushed over and took her son away. She said coldly, "You don't need to care about him." With his son in his arms, he dashed toward the pharmacy in a flash and disappeared in an instant. Shun Jili, naturally, he followed along. But Ning Xiaoma was so fast that she arrived at the pharmacy in the blink of an eye and locked Shun Jili outside the door. The door slammed shut and almost hit Shun Jili's nose. Shun Jili took a step back. Was she angry? This was the first time Ning Xiaoma had lost her temper at him since the two of them got married. He raised his hand and rubbed the space between his eyebrows. A dark look flashed across his eyes. He was a medical expert. With just one look, he knew what kind of danger his son had encountered. He didn't expect that person to be so ruthless as to deal such a heavy blow to a child. No matter what little Nianma used to be, he was now his son and his wife's precious baby. He would not allow anyone to humiliate him. He lowered his eyes and thought for a moment. In the end, he pushed the door open and walked in. In the pharmacy, Ning Xiaoma had already treated her son's injuries. Little Nianma's injuries were basically superficial. Because he had been poisoned before, although he had taken the antidote, there was still some residual poison in his body. Therefore, his injuries were a little bruised. Although little Nianma had some medical skills, he was not good at it. Moreover, because he had been running for his life and fighting, the injuries on his body were wrapped up. Chapter 2351. His body was originally tender and white, which made the wounds on his body even more obvious. There were many wounds on his body, and there were even 2 on his thighs. Ning Xiaoma was worried that her son's vital parts would be hurt, so she wanted to take off the cloth to have a look. Unexpectedly, little Nyinma blushed and covered the cloth with both of his little hands. "Mother, I am not hurt there." Ning Xiuama was stunned. She looked at her son and had an idea. Was her son shy? Could it be? He was not even a year old. She looked at her son and vaguely felt that there was something different about her son. He seemed to have grown up overnight and was very sensible. "Xiuama, let me do it." Shun Juli was finally able to take over. Ning Xiuama nodded. His father should be fine after checking it. Children did not know the severity of the situation. If there was really an injury, it would be fatal. She took a step back and gave Shun Juli the position. Shun Juli was about to reach out his hand, but little Nyinma was still holding the cloth tightly. "I'm really not hurt there. You don't have to check it." Shun Juli paused for a moment and looked into little Nyinma's eyes. "Nyinma, you are the son of a deity and a devil. You must be responsible. You should not hide your illness for fear of treatment. I only want to hear the truth from you." Little Nyinma hurriedly said, "I am telling the truth. I am really not hurt." Shun Juli nodded slightly. "I believe you." Sure enough, he did not check his body. Little Nyinma was relieved. To be honest, he did not know that it was embarrassing to be naked. However, ever since the woman said that he was naked, he seemed to have been enlightened. Ning Xiuama looked at her son, whose face was still a little red. She was quite amused. The anger that she felt when she saw her son was injured was greatly reduced. Shun Juli's medicine was naturally the best. With the help of Shun Juli's telekinesis, little Nyinma's injuries were healed very quickly. Ning Xiuama chatted with little Nyinma as she watched her husband heal her son. Ask him about what it was like to be in the army. Little Nyinma initially wanted to complain to his parents, but he suddenly remembered the letter that he saw at the entrance of the array when he was trying to break the array. It was written in a flamboyant style. "Baby, if you leave the array, you can ask your parents to avenge you." Little Nyinma was furious. He did not want the woman to look down on him anymore. If she wanted to take revenge, she should rely on her own abilities and not tell her parents. Only those good-for-nothing brats would do that. Now that he heard Ning Xiuama ask about it, he steeled his heart and didn't mention anything about the mysterious man with the ghost face. He used other excuses to gloss over it. Ning Xiuama didn't know the truth. She thought that there was indeed a problem with her husband's array formation. She couldn't help but glare at Shun Juli. Shun Juli didn't say a word. He just looked at his son with a faint smile. There seemed to be a dark light flowing in his eyes. Little Nyinma was shocked by his father's gaze. He always had an illusion that his father had seen through him. Therefore, he moved closer to his mother. Ning Xiuama felt guilty for her son. After the wounds on his body were treated, she carried him and left. "My son, sleep with me tonight." This was the benefit that little Nyinma had been fighting for many times. Now that he suddenly got it, he was stunned and subconsciously looked at his father. Shun Juli was casually playing with a white jade flute in his hand. He looked at him thoughtfully. Little Nyinma felt a chill in his heart. Was his father planning to throw him into some kind of array formation again? Chapter 2352. Little Nyinma felt a chill in his heart. Was his father planning to throw him into some kind of array formation again? No, he had just been trapped in the array for 10 days. He was hungry, sleepy, and tired. He just wanted to find a big bed and have a good night's sleep. He did not want to be tortured again. He opened his mouth and was about to reject, but Shun Juli spoke first. "Well, sleep with us tonight." Ning Xiuama looked at Shun Juli, and Shun Juli said, "Nyinma has never slept with us before." Shun Nyinma's eyes immediately lit up, and he nodded. Ning Xiuama was stunned for a moment, but she did not say anything else. "Nyinma, can you walk on your own?" Shun Juli asked his son again. Shun Nyinma immediately nodded. Yes, he had no problem walking on his own. "How about we hold your hand and walk together?" Shun Juli made a new suggestion. "Sure." Little Nyinma immediately agreed with a joyful tone. Therefore, the family of 3 held hands and walked back to the bedroom together. Little Nyinma was very happy and satisfied. The feeling of walking hand in hand with his family was very good, and he had no other thoughts. Ning Xiuama's heart was on her son, so she naturally did not pay attention to other things. As for Shun Julie, his eyes were on the mother and daughter, and he did not look around. Just like that, the family of 3 walked into the bedroom. No one noticed the heavenly law stone squatting at the door of the bedroom. No one even looked at it. The heavenly law stone was depressed. Although it was in a pile of stones, the pile of stones was green, and only it was white. How distinct! How eye-catching! However, the family of 3 did not see it. They did not see it. The wind blew, and the falling petals on the top of the heavenly law stone danced in the wind. It was a little sad. The heavenly law stone felt that it needed to soak in water to calm down and think about the next step. It silently flew to the side of the misty lake. Just as it was about to dive in, it suddenly sensed something and looked at a big tree not far away. It was deep into the night, and a dark person was sitting on a dark tree. A black robe, a black mask, and long black hair. Everything was black, as if it wanted to become one with the tree. The man sat there, hugging his knees as he stared at the lake, seemingly lost in thought. The heavenly Tao stone didn't recognize a person based on their appearance, but the soul hidden underneath. Therefore, no matter how skilled a person was in disguise, or how skilled they were in disguise, they wouldn't be able to escape the heavenly Tao stone's eyes. Unless that person's kung fu had reached an incredible level, such as Shun Jiuli, the current Ning Xiuama, or the former Luo Jiuqin. There were only a few of them. But now it actually couldn't see the true appearance of this black-clothed man. It only felt that the other party was hidden in the clouds, and it couldn't even see through the other party's mask. The black-clothed man seemed to have sensed something, and he looked at the heavenly Tao stone. Then his body moved, and he suddenly stood in front of the heavenly Tao stone. The heavenly Tao stone did not move. The black-clothed man's eyes flashed. He reached out a hand to touch the top of the heavenly Tao stone. Crack! A bolt of lightning suddenly appeared and struck down towards the black-clothed masked man. The black-clothed man raised his black sleeves and flicked his fingertips. A pale golden light flew out and collided with the lightning. Chi! With a soft sound, the lightning disappeared, and the pale golden light also disappeared. The ground returned to normal. Chapter 23:53. The heavenly law stone shook slightly, and the masked man took a step back. The masked man raised his hand and looked at his fingertips. Then he looked at the ordinary-looking stone and smiled. Then he turned around and disappeared. The heavenly law stone was speechless. This person's kung fu was also top-notch. It seemed that he was not much worse than Shun Jiuli and Ning Xiuama. What made the heavenly law stone even more puzzled was that it smelled a very familiar scent from this person. Also, the Fantian Palace was not a place that could be entered as one wished. However, this person came and went as he pleased. He did not care about the restrictions of the Fantian Palace at all. Who was this person? While the heavenly law stone was speculating, a person in a white robe landed in front of it with a gentle breeze. Shun Jiuli. The heavenly law stone froze and did not react for a while. He finally came to look for it. It knew that he would come to look for it. However, it did not expect him to come so suddenly. The heavenly law stone did not know whether it should ignore him or jump into the water proudly. Do you have something to say to me? Shun Jiuli went straight to the point without beating around the bush. The heavenly law stone was speechless. It proudly typed, "I think you should have a problem that you want to ask me." Shun Jiuli looked at the proud stone and seemed to be surprised. He raised his eyebrows and asked, "What problem should I ask you?" The heavenly law stone was speechless. Why did it feel that there was something wrong with this conversation? Shouldn't he be the one begging it and then asking it to show him the way? Don't you think it's strange that you suddenly became small? The heavenly law stone felt that it should remind him. Shun Jiuli looked at it and said casually, "It's not strange. When I was in the Tianxi continent, I became small once every few years." The heavenly law stone typed again, "That was the Tianxi continent, not the mythical continent. If you were in the mythical continent, you would be punished by the heavenly law." Shun Jiuli hugged his arms and said, "What did I do to deserve the punishment of the heavenly Tao?" The stone of heavenly axiom said earnestly, The heavenly axiom is good at reincarnation. Supreme Divinity must have heard that the mandate of heaven is hard to go against. However, Supreme Divinity has never taken the mandate of heaven seriously. Who knows how many people's fates you have changed? It is only natural that the heavenly axiom will punish you. What's the specific punishment? Shunjuli was still indifferent. The heavenly Tao stone said, "You will return to your youth once every 3 months, and the cycle will be longer each time. For example, if you needed 5 days to recover, you'll need 7 days the next time, and 9 days after that." Shunjuli, if that was the case, then he would be in his child state for a few years. This punishment wasn't just any normal perverted punishment. In this world, there was nothing that Shunjuli was afraid of. Although he was the guardian of the heavenly Tao stone, it was just because he was happy to do it. It did not mean that he had to respect the heavenly Tao. He did things according to his heart and had his own principles. He did not care about anything. Now it seemed that there were some rules that he still had to abide by, because he really could not do anything about the heavenly Tao now. Shunjuli lowered his eyes. No one knew what he was thinking. Suddenly, he asked, "When was this punishment handed down? Is it really from the heavenly Tao?" The heavenly Tao stone said, "I only receive orders from the heavenly Tao. This punishment is naturally from the heavenly Tao." Shunjuli asked again, "Have you seen the heavenly Tao before?" The heavenly Tao stone. It really had not seen the heavenly Tao. The heavenly Tao's orders seemed to have been set in advance, and it would automatically receive them at a certain time. Chapter 2354. However, as the heavenly law stone, it would be too embarrassing if it said that it had never seen the heavenly law before. It could not lie to its guardian, so the heavenly law stone only responded with a humph and did not answer the question. Shunjuli looked at it with a smile. If the heavenly law was standing in front of you, would you be able to recognize it? The heavenly law stone was speechless. It should be able to recognize it, right? Besides, the heavenly law was said to have melted into all things in the world and had no substance. How could it be standing in front of it? Shunjuli did not want to dwell on this question. Is there a way to resolve this punishment? How can it be resolved? He finally got to the point. The heavenly law stone immediately perked up. It finally told him the way to resolve the punishment. Shen Yinma suddenly realized that his parents had been spending more time with him. His father no longer threw him into the array every now and then. Instead, he let him stay by his side like a normal child. In 2 months, the family of 3 went out to play 3 times. Each time, it would be more than 10 days. They visited all the famous mountains and rivers in the 6 worlds and got used to the local customs of the 6 worlds. Shunjuli even took them to visit some of his friends. Shunjuli was indifferent, and his friends were all eccentric. There was a chess master, a martial arts fanatic, an array master, and a drunkard. These people lived in seclusion in a wizardry barrier and did not care about the world. Some of them lived in seclusion in the city. Some of them lived in seclusion in a famous mountain and river. They spent every day with the wind and the moon and did not talk to the mortals. Every single one of these people was an outstanding talent in their respective fields. When they cultivated a certain skill to the peak, they couldn't help but feel a sense of loneliness at the top and wanted to find an opponent to defeat. Shunjuli had a wide range of hobbies. He had practiced every skill to the peak. Naturally, he became the target of these people. Therefore, Shunjuli did not hesitate to defeat them. Usually, the result of a fight was that they could not make a deal. They became Shunjuli's friends. Although these people were eccentric and difficult to get along with, they respected Shunjuli very much and valued his children even more. Shunjuli was also strange. Every time they arrived at a place, he would let little Nianma compete with the host so that these people could test little Nianma's ability. Nianma was still young, so his skills were not as good as those of the masters who were already at the peak of their power. However, it was enough to show his extraordinary talent. Everyone was amazed and congratulated the Divine Lord for having a successor. Everyone liked smart geniuses, and little Nianma was so adorable. These people were eager to take him as their apprentice and teach him all the skills they were proud of. However, they also understood that he was the son of the supreme divinity and would be personally taught by the supreme divinity. No matter how much these people liked him, they could only envy him. Unexpectedly, Shunjuli smiled gracefully when he heard their praise and asked if they were willing to accept a disciple. This was simply a pie that fell from the sky. How could these people not be willing? He immediately nodded. However, Shunjuli also had his own conditions. That was, his son could be the apprentice of any of them. However, it was not limited to only one of them. He could be the apprentice of more than one. This was actually a taboo at that time, because in the philosophy of the people at that time, there could only be one apprentice. Otherwise, it was considered a betrayal of the master, which was despised by the people. Fortunately, Shunjuli's friends did not play by the rules and did not pay much attention to these red tape. Besides, it was also an honor to have the son of the supreme divinity as their apprentice. Moreover, little Nianma was such a talented child. Naturally, they agreed. Chapter 23:55. Therefore, after Shunjuli's family of 3 went around, little Nianma had 10 super powerful masters. Little Nianma was at the age where he was eager to learn new things. As a child, it was easy for him to admire the strong. Moreover, the 10 masters were all real talents. Therefore, little Nianma was very happy when he first became a disciple. He had even more fun when he was with his parents. Since he was born, he had been through a lot of difficulties. He either did not have a father or a mother. Finally, both of his parents were alive, but his father trained him hard and often threw him into the array. Now, he finally had the opportunity to travel with his parents. Naturally, he was very happy and excited. As a child, he was very competitive and wanted to surpass his father. Therefore, he also wanted to learn the skills of others. Therefore, he did not hesitate to become a disciple. However, when he became a disciple of the next few masters, he seemed to have noticed something and was a little reluctant. "Father, why do you want me to have so many masters? I think that although some of their skills are very good, they are still not as good as you. I want you and Mother to teach me personally. I don't want so many masters." When it came to the 10th master, little Nianma finally could not help but burst out. "Nianma, if you want to be really strong, you have to learn from others. Also, you have to experience more outside to grow. It is not right to always stay with your parents." Shunjuli educated him. "But 10 masters are too many. If each of them teaches me for a year, I will have to learn for 10 years. These 10 masters have their own strengths and are outstanding in their own way. Nianma, we hope that you can become really strong and not be controlled by anyone or anything." Ning Xuema hugged her son and comforted him. Even his mother, who had always loved him, said so. Little Nianma knew that it was a foregone conclusion and could not be changed. He looked at Ning Xuema and asked, "Mother, are you hiding something from me?" He always felt that something was not right with his parents, but after all, he was still young and could not figure out what was wrong. Ning Xuema was heartbroken. She hugged her son and kissed his forehead. "Nianma, no matter what, we only want you to be well. Don't think too much." Little Nianma was a little greedy for the warmth of his mother's embrace. He was still a little worried, so he snuggled into Ning Xuema's arms and said, "Mother, don't abandon me again. We have to be together forever. I'll be a good boy and listen to you." Ning Xuema's face turned slightly pale. She felt as if a knife had pierced her heart. She didn't want to be separated from her son, but, therefore, she hugged her son even tighter and smiled. "Silly boy, of course, we would not abandon Nianma. Never." However, Nianma, the child, could not stay with his parents all the time. He had to go to school to study and interact with other children. The masters that your father found for you are not only skilled, but they also have many disciples. If you go, you can have some playmates. Don't you want to play with other children? Little Nianma was a little tempted by Gu Shijio's words. It was true that he rarely played with children of his own age. In fact, he was eager to play with children of his own age. It was a very lively birthday banquet. The first birthday banquet of the son of the divine lord and the great devil was naturally very grand. All the famous people in the 6 realms were there. Among them were Yi Tianli, who had already become the celestial emperor, and the 10 masters of Little Nianma. During the banquet, Shun Juli publicly announced that Little Nianma would be apprenticed to the 10 masters. Chapter 23:56. Although most of these 10 masters were hermits, their bearing was still there. At a glance, one could tell that they were extraordinary and not to be trifled with. Normally, it was extremely difficult to acknowledge one of them as a master, and one would even have to overcome all obstacles. Little Nianma, at such a young age, had been apprenticed to 10 of them. It was indeed unprecedented. Naturally, everyone congratulated him. Of course, there were many people who were jealous of him. The hall was full of laughter. While everyone was celebrating, Shun Juli suddenly pointed up. "It is cold and windy on the roof. My friend, you should come down." A white light flashed, and a big hole appeared on the roof. A person in a light green robe floated down. Everyone was surprised. No one expected that there would be someone who dared to eavesdrop in the hall of Fanteon Palace. The person had a ghost mask on his face, and the robe on his body was so loose that no one could tell his gender. His appearance naturally caused a commotion. Ning Xiuma narrowed her eyes slightly and looked at the person with a smile. "Are you passing by again?" That person was the mysterious ghost mask. She did not panic when she came in. She smiled gently. "No, this time I am here to give your son a birthday gift." She turned her hands, and a small box appeared in her palms. The box was made of agarwood with exquisite carvings. What was more dazzling was that the box was inlaid with the best quality emerald. Just by looking at the box, one could tell that the gift was precious. She took a few steps forward and came to Little Nianma. She handed the box to him. "Here, this is for you. Happy birthday." When Little Nianma saw her, his whole body became nervous. His fingers clenched in his sleeves and looked at her coldly. He wanted to see what new trick she was playing. Although the box was novel, Little Nianma was not interested. He did not have the slightest intention to take it. "What? You don't dare to take it? Are you afraid that a snake will jump out and bite you?" The mysterious ghost mask seemed to be joking and serious at the same time. Little Xiuma looked at her and then looked at the box in her hand. Suddenly, she laughed. "Trying to provoke me? It is useless for you to provoke me. I just don't want your things." The mysterious ghost-faced person's eyes flickered for a moment before she put the box back into her storage space. She smiled and said, "That's good. I didn't really want to give it to you. If you don't want it, it means that you have no fate with it." Shinyama was speechless. He didn't expect that this person would back off just like that. He felt like he had stepped on empty air. He was suddenly curious about the contents of the box. What exactly was inside? Thinking about it again, this person couldn't have been exposed by his father. So in order to cover up his identity, he casually took out a treasure and said that it was a gift so that he could get away with it. Right? If he didn't want it, it would be exactly what she wanted. The more Shun Nianma thought about it, the more he felt that he had been tricked by her again. He did not like this person, so naturally, he did not want her to get what she wanted. After pondering for a while, he immediately put on a smile and pulled the person's sleeve. "Auntie, it is not easy for you to come all the way here. Since you are here to give me a birthday present, how can I not give you face? I was just joking just now. How can I not want your present?" Little Nianma's voice was crisp and clear. Everyone in the hall could hear it. Everyone was stunned. Even Ning Xiuma stared blankly for a moment. Her gaze swept over the mysterious ghost-faced person. Chapter 23:57. Even Ning Xiuma stared blankly for a moment. Her gaze swept over the mysterious person's body. This person was actually a woman. Her eyes were very sharp. Usually, a woman dressed as a man would not be able to hide from her eyes. However, she was wrong this time. She did not realize that the mysterious person who was almost as famous as Shun Juli was actually a woman. Shun Juli's eyes fell on his son. He was deep in thought. The mysterious woman was stunned when little Nianma exposed her identity on the spot. When she saw the little kid pulling her sleeve and calling her Ani, she was a little annoyed. She wanted to shake off the little boy's hand, but little Nianma seemed to have noticed that she was going to do that. He let go of her sleeve and took a step back. His beautiful little face was full of smiles. One of his little hands even reached out as if he was waiting for her to give the gift to him. The mysterious person was speechless. She looked at little Nianma's proud face and suddenly smiled. You have already rejected it, which means that you are not destined to have it. However, since you still want it, fine, I will give you another chance. However, this thing is very proud. Whether it belongs to you or not, it depends on your fate. After she finished speaking, the box appeared in her palm again. It doesn't matter if you want this thing, but you have to open it here. He would open on the spot. Even if a snake came out of it, he would not be afraid. Little Nianma agreed without hesitation. Only then did the mysterious grimace person pass the box to him. Everyone's interest was piqued by her words, and they all widened their eyes as they watched the scene unfold. This person was obviously playing hard to get. Ning Xuema frowned slightly. She was about to quietly move to her son's side to prevent any accidents. Shen Jili held her wrist and gently shook his head. Although Ning Xuema did not know the intention of her husband, she knew that he must have his reasons. Therefore, she did not move forward. She only made a spell with her fingers in her sleeve. She would immediately take action if she felt that something was wrong. That box was an extremely intricate mechanical item. It was seamless without any gaps. After Shen Yinma took the box, he touched it here and there. She did not know what he found, but he opened the box with a snap. The mysterious grimace man's fingers suddenly tightened. He actually opened the box. It was really him. The others did not know, so they did not feel strange when little Nianma opened the box. However, she knew very well that this box could only be opened by a specific person. Even if it was her, she couldn't do anything about it. She had wandered around in this world for so many years. She had gone to the ends of the earth and finally found this person. Although this person was very different from what she had imagined, she still found him. She looked at little Nianma with a complicated expression. No one could read her emotions from her eyes. Little Nianma did not know what was going on in the mysterious person's mind. Like most of the people around him, he was attracted by the items in the box. As soon as the box was opened, a golden light shot out. There was a golden snake in the box. The snake was not big. It was only about a foot long. Its scales were as dazzling as gold. Its body was obviously like a snake, but there were two coral-like horns on the top of its head. What was more strange was that the snake seemed to be covered with a layer of faint golden light, which was quite similar to the light of Buddha. Chapter 2358. Furthermore, this snake actually had long eyelashes. Those eyelashes were also light gold in color. Because its eyes were closed, those eyelashes gave off an extremely delicate feeling. The moment the box was opened, the snake's eyes that had been closed all this time suddenly opened. Those eyeballs were the color of black jade, and there seemed to be a luster flowing within them. Those who were staring at the box only felt their vision blur, as if their souls were being sucked away, and they felt dizzy. Little Nianma did not feel anything at all. He stared at the golden snake in the box and felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. Although the eyes of the golden snake were black, the light that it emitted was light golden. The golden light reflected on little Nianma's body as if he was coated with a layer of golden light. What was more strange was that the golden light reflected on the back of little Nianma's head and formed a circle. Ning Xuema looked at her son and was moved. Little Nianma looked like the Buddha with his own light of Buddha. Of course, it was only a statue of the Buddha. Her little Nianma was extraordinarily handsome and definitely did not look like the Buddha. Moreover, the Buddha's light of Buddha was golden, but at this moment, the light of Buddha on little Nianma's body was light golden with 7 colors. It flowed freely, and people could not take their eyes off it. Little Nianma blinked his eyes, and the golden snake blinked its eyes as well. Suddenly, the golden light flashed, and the snake suddenly wrapped around little Nianma's wrist. Ning Shuima's heart was alarmed. Her hands were about to form a seal. However, Shun Juli held her wrist again. He sent her a directed audio. Don't move. The hornless dragon will not hurt him. Hornless dragon? The little snake was actually a hornless dragon? However, did the hornless dragon not have horns? She remembered that the hornless dragon was a hornless dragon in the myths and legends that she had read. How could the hornless dragon's head have such beautiful horns? Shinjili seemed to have guessed her doubts. He continued to explain to her, through telepathy, the hornless dragon king has horns. Also, those myths and legends are just legends. They are based on reality. Ning Xiuma suspected that Shun Juli could read her mind. He seemed to know what she was thinking clearly. However, his explanation was reasonable. After all, myths and legends were just legends. They were often worlds apart from the truth and couldn't be believed. Ning Xiuma looked at the hornless dragon again and truly felt that the hornless dragon was rather good-looking. Little Nianma was a little traumatized by snakes, but he did not feel disgusted by the hornless dragon, which looked like a snake. The scales on the hornless dragon were as clear as jade. It was cool and smooth when it wrapped itself around his wrist, but it was very comfortable. It did not give him the creepy feeling of being entangled by a snake. The hornless dragon circled around his wrist 3 times. Suddenly, it flashed and turned into a bracelet with the pattern of a hornless dragon. It was firmly on little Nianma's wrist. Little Nianma frowned slightly. He had an illusion that he was bound by a mission. He raised his hand and wanted to take the bracelet off, but the bracelet seemed to be attached to his wrist and could not be removed. He tried for a long time, but to no avail. Little Nianma was a little annoyed. Hey, I don't wear a bracelet. Yours truly is not a woman. Take your bracelet back. I don't want it anymore. After a few words, he realized that he could not find his target. The mysterious woman with the ghost face had disappeared. Everyone's attention was focused on the hornless dragon on little Nianma's wrist. No one noticed when the woman left. Ning Xiuma slightly clenched her fingers. The woman disappeared into thin air. She did not turn around and leave. Chapter 23:59. Little Nianma received a lot of gifts for his birthday, but the gift from the lady was the weirdest because he could not take it off. However, the gift had a rather powerful function. Little Nianma's body, which had not developed for a year, finally grew. He used to look like a 3 or 4-year-old, but soon after he put on the bracelet, he grew a lot taller. After the birthday party, he already looked like a 7 or 8-year-old. Fortunately, the size of his clothes could be adjusted according to his height. Otherwise, he would have been naked on the spot. After the birthday party, little Nianma was taken away by a master who was the best at practicing spells. He began his journey of cultivation. This master may not be as good as Shun Juli in other aspects, but he had many disciples in the 6 realms. What made little Nianma even more excited was that this master had just recruited a group of 7 or 8-year-old disciples. There were more than a dozen of them. He finally had a playmate. In order to become Shun Nianma's first master, the master brought 2 disciples with him. One was a boy, and the other was a girl. Both of them were smart and handsome. In less than half a day, the 3 children had already started to play together. Therefore, when little Nianma left with his master, although he was still reluctant to part with his parents, he did not cry so much. She looked at the cloud that carried her son away and gradually disappeared. All the guests had also left, and the Fanteon Palace returned to its usual peace. Ning Xiuma stood there and looked at the direction where her son went. She and her son had always been separated more than they were together. This time, she did not know when they would meet again. Shun Juli held her hand and sighed. Xiuma, I am sorry. Ning Xiuma leaned into his embrace and hugged his waist. She shook her head slightly. I chose this path myself. You don't need to feel apologetic. What we're doing is letting down our son. He's still so young. He is not young. When he was the Divine Lord's age, he had already established his own clan. The heavenly law stone next to them began to express its disapproval. Ning Xiuma turned her attention back to the Heavenly Law Stone. Heavenly Law Stone, I don't understand. Nienma has it in the other world. Why can't he go to the other world? He was born in this world and belongs to this world. Furthermore, he has his own mission. Naturally, he cannot leave. It turned out that in order to break the Heavenly Tao's punishment on Shun Jiuli had to do 3 things and reverse the fates of 3 people. 2 of them were in the Tianxi continent, so he had to return to the Tianxi continent. Everyone knew that the passageways leading to the outside world had all disappeared. If Shun Jiuli wanted to go back, he would have to borrow the power of the Heavenly Tao Stone. On the other hand, the Heavenly Stone would consume more than half of its power to carry the 2 of them through transmigration. It would take 10 years for it to recover. Only after it had recovered would it be possible to send the 2 of them back. However, little Nienma could not go with them. According to the Heavenly Tao Stone, if little Nienma forced himself to go with them, he would lose all his power. When he arrived at the other world, he might even disappear. Therefore, they could not take him with them. Of course, they were worried about leaving little Nienma alone in the celestial devil continent. Therefore, Shun Jiuli found 10 masters for his son. Each of them taught him for a year, so 10 years would pass. Moreover, with these 10 masters looking after the little guy, no one would dare to bully him. Shun Jiuli and his wife could rest assured. Chapter 2360. Shun Jiuli and his wife were the Divine Lord and the Great Devil respectively. Both of them held important positions in the continent. Logically speaking, they should not leave easily. If anyone knew that they were going to be away for 10 years, there would be a lot of twists and turns in the 6 realms. Therefore, even if they were to leave, they had to do it secretly and not tell anyone. After all, little Nienma was still too young to understand many things. If they told him in advance, he would probably cry endlessly and follow them regardless of the consequences. Also, when he was with others, he might leak it in a few words. It would be bad if someone with ulterior motives heard it. Therefore, they could not even tell little Nienma about this trip. However, it was impossible to hide this matter from the child for 10 years. After a year, Shun Nienma would definitely return to the Fantian Palace. Shun Jiuli left a letter for his son in the palace that only he could open to explain the matter. By then, Nienma would have grown up and experienced a lot. He would be able to accept this matter and keep it a secret. In short, the 2 of them were fully prepared for this matter and considered all kinds of situations. They also made arrangements for the 8 mythological beasts. 4 of them would secretly protect Shun Nienma, and the other 4 would stay in the Fantian Palace. The only thing Ning Xuemo was worried about was the mysterious person. She always felt that the person seemed to be harboring evil intentions towards her son. Shun Jiuli only rubbed her head. Don't worry, that person will not really harm Nienma. At most, the little guy will suffer a little. If it is really necessary, she will save him. Ning Xuemo looked at him and was a little suspicious. Great master, you're good at calculation. Have you calculated something? Shun Jiuli leisurely said, the heavenly secrets should not be revealed. Ning Xuemo looked at him with a smile. Why are you keeping me in suspense? Shun Jiuli sighed. Xuemo, I was punished this time because I revealed too many heavenly secrets. If I reveal it again, I don't know if the punishment will be worse. But if you really want to know, I don't mind telling you. Don't. Ning Xuemo put a finger on his lips to stop him from talking. You don't have to talk to me. As long as that person doesn't really harm my son. The Heavenly Tao Stone was already glowing. All right, it's getting late. You should be on your way. 100 years had passed in the blink of an eye. For Rong Yutianlan, who had lived for an unknown number of years, 100 years was nothing at all. However, he felt that the past few decades had been somewhat torturous because his friend, the ancestor of Buddha Lotus Mountain, had not appeared even once. Originally, this venerable sovereign would harass him once a year, ask him to play chess, pick his fruits, and even occasionally exchange a few moves with him. At that time, he felt that he was at a disadvantage. A dignified deity lived like a follower of the venerable sovereign. However, after not seeing him for 100 years, he felt that life was as lonely as snow. Life was not so fun. On this day, he was picking a kind of blue fruit in the courtyard. This kind of fruit was the best for brewing wine. The wine it brewed was mellow and sweet, and the alcohol content was not small. This kind of fruit could only be brewed once a year. In the past, the venerable sovereign would drink it when he came here. Every time, Rong Yu Tianlan would feel extremely pained. Now, Rong Yu Tianlan's wine cellar had accumulated 100 jars, but the person who often came to drink wine was still nowhere to be seen. Venerable sovereign, will you never come back? Rong Yu Tianlan sighed while holding a bunch of fruits. Buzz. Whoosh. A strange sound suddenly came from the sky. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.